Today on the ZuluOne podcast, we have a very special team. She is the president and founder of the Enlight Foundation, striving to bring love and unity through music and collaboration. And he is the vice president of the Florida Endowment Foundation for Florida's graduates, Leah and Peter Olstein.
I'll invite you to close your eyes, uncross your arms and legs, and ground your feet to the floor. Feel the weight of your body where you are. Now we're going to take 3 deep breaths. Take 1 deep breath for you. In through your nose. And out through your mouth. Now 1 for your mother. In. And out. Now 1 for your father. Inhale. And exhale. Now see your mother behind your left shoulder. Close to your heart, supporting you. Even if you do not know your mother, or you had a difficult relationship with her, be in gratitude to her for bringing you into this world. Feel her presence. Now see your father behind your right shoulder. Supporting you. Feel his presence. Now see your mother's parents behind her on each side. And your father's parents behind him. And your great-grandparents behind them. Now see all your ancestors standing behind you. Invite all the excluded ones to join them. See the warm glow, cascading life force, experience, intuition, and ancient knowledge coming towards you. Feel their presence supporting you, moving forward. Sit in that feeling for a moment. Now when you're ready, come back to the space.
How's it going?
Amazing.
At open space, right?
Oh, yeah.
Good. How you guys been?
Like I said, that's a loaded question. So just this year, on March 4th, we're just going to go into a conversation. So on March, I'm going to give you a little background and then I'll get into this. So most of my life, I had, it was really hard for me to identify or be connected with anything because I grew up in a family that came, I'm a Holocaust survivor's grandchild and the daughter of a Holocaust survivor's, daughter. So we never had any kind of attachment to or any kind of connection with any type of spirituality or a God or Judaism or I knew I was Jewish, but I didn't really have any connection to it. Like we ate matzah on Passover, and and my parents fasted on Yom Kippur, and on Hanukkah we lit candles, and we made certain connections that would be considered high holidays, but not in any kind of religious way.
Like Jewish
Still
light.
ate ham and garlic crabs, and
Yeah.
We had, I knew I was Jewish, so basically my family was afraid to be Jewish.
Mm.
So what happened with that was, and then my parents got divorced when I was very young. I was 7 years old, and there were other things like in between with, the family kind of dividing and being a little kid and being confused, and it all was because of my grandfather, who in Hungary, and there's more to the story, but his family was very wealthy, and the Nazis came in and made them sign over all of their properties and their, give all of their valuables, and then took his family and just killed them all and left him alive because he was 15 with, gold in his teeth, and they were a wealthy family. So it's possible that his brother was also thrown on a truck. He was a little older than him. But after they got to that point, he was very damaged, my grandfather. And he had like 7 fingers because he was trying to save his life. And he took a grenade to throw it, and it blew up in his hands. And he said that he would be on backs of trucks and he would be jam-packed. But in the morning it was easy because there would be so many dead people that the live people would be on top of them, kind of stuff. Like really horrific. They didn't have food. Like they would eat the snails, but also their poop, because that was, anything to eat. So I grew up with all of this and the ripple effects of that. And
So was he like in the military? Or
no, he was 15.
He was just trying to
They
survive?
put him in the camps. He even escaped. He had a tattoo, but they never finished it because he escaped. He eventually escaped. And then he came over here, and
What's interesting is that instead of carrying and being in fear, he took the opposite approach, which is why he lost his fingers. He rebelled.
So he became part of the resistance against...
The story goes on, but essentially he threw a grenade and lost his fingers, but instead of cowering and being afraid, he took an active stance.
Wow.
Which is interesting.
yeah. And the issues then he came over to this country when the war in a refugee on a boat, and then he ended up in refugee camps, and he ended up my grandmother's sister took her to a refugee party. She was very young. She was only like 14, 15 years old. And then my grandpa and her met, and she got pregnant, and she was a very young mother. They got married when she got pregnant. And this was like a connection that happened straight from the war. And then and my mom they didn't get married, and they They just met at this party, and they were both very young. And my grandmother actually also had a very big trauma with Judaism because her father stopped working. They had 5 kids. He stopped working and he started studying Torah.
Okay.
So they were very poor. They had 5 kids. The mother was overwhelmed. Then eventually she lost one of her sisters and there was abuse and whatever. So it was like this whole really weird trying to grow up like this with these traumatized people. And my mother, and I'm not going to go into all of that because I've done a lot of work on this, and I have had, and I talked to my husband about it, but, you know, so many traumatic experiences as a ripple effect of this that I had a lot of fears and anxieties, and especially then becoming a parent. I mean, there's so much more to the story, like the evolution. I came to the Kabbalah Center, and I learned Judaism from a different angle, more of a spiritual, understanding the different worlds, and it's more like quantum physics, and that's my favorite subject, and, you know, we can elaborate on that, but...
More on your terms.
I understand that we all have choices all the time, like every second that we're alive, and everything is perception as well. So understanding really how things work on the quantum level, and then understanding that there's always that one angel that's the most important angel of God to give us free will, to give us the ability to choose in every experience that comes your way. So then what happened was I realized a long time ago that and before I had kids, that I needed to, I mean, I left home at 18. I went around the world. I just had been on my own, growing and evolving from a very young age, that I was trying to find my identity. But all of my experiences were still, all these experiences still showed up. And then eventually I went to Israel, and I went to all of they call it's a mikvah. It's like the body of water that you cleanse yourself into all the righteous places. And I did a lot of cleansing. I saw a lot of the things that happened to me that I responded in a way that created more of the effect and more of the trauma. And it was perpetuating. So what happened was eventually I got married and eventually had kids, and then all of a sudden I went to crazy panic of fear and anxiety because I understood that my kids absorbed my water in me, and they had my cells and they had my consciousness, and that they were gonna, anything that happened with them was a reflection of me, and I freaked out. And I really panicked about, like, trying to figure out how to disconnect from this family, this history. I mean, I knew this a long time ago. Then I met you. Actually, we met, oh my God. We met, I was pregnant, and that was the baby that died. And that baby died because I knew that baby needed to absorb everything in me and to leave and be like this angel, like this influence in our lives as a family, to kind of the baby of chaos, to take the chaos out. Then I got pregnant with Jonathan, but Tony was born, and then Tony was our baby while I was pregnant, and you know, so then I got to know you. For the listeners, Leah watched Tony, my oldest son, while he was during daycare. It was kind of, watched him when we were at work. So we have a deep family connection. Yeah, so we lived in the same community. Yeah, exactly. And
Those are fun times.
Right.
Yeah.
And Tony and Jonathan are like almost exactly 1 year apart.
Yeah.
Like 1 year and 1 week. So, Tony was the baby that I was supposed to be taking care of when I didn't have that baby to take care
Yeah.
of. But I knew it. Anyway, so we had met, and I started to understand through family constellations therapy and systemic healing that it was just this loyalty that I had that I needed to release. And I did a few, sessions with Michelle Buckner, with Sophie Sudai.
Yeah.
And it worked. I mean, obviously I felt something and I felt some deep shifts happening, but I didn't really, and I knew it, like I believed it. But what happened was my sister, my youngest half-sister, came in town. She was going through some stuff. And then we had a session with Sophie and with my sister. See, my sister wanted it. And then my dad, she was staying with my dad. So my dad said he would be involved. And then they invited me to come. So it was the three of us. And in that session, it was really for my sister. And what ended up happening was Sophie gave an exercise to do. So it was a 40-day exercise where you take your picture of your mother, picture of your father, picture of yourself, put a candle, and then every morning or every day you light a candle and you just sit and have gratitude for those two people for bringing you into this world. 10 minutes of only gratitude, releasing all of the stories that happened to them and with them. And then I would stand like in front of a mirror and do this. She didn't suggest the mirror, but I did because I would see myself while I'm doing this and it was better for me. And I recommend that. So she said, it's like stand in one spot and say these are my ancestors. Step forward. These are and stop and stand. And these are my, grandparents. And then step forward. And these are my parents. And step forward. This is me. I embrace my life and my destiny. Thank you to all of my ancestors and family for your love and sacrifice so that I am here today.
Yeah.
I embrace my life and my destiny. So I did that for 40 days. My husband, he did it. We did it together.
Oh, that's powerful.
My sister never did it, unfortunately, but my dad did it. So what's interesting is my dad lives literally right next door to me. So when I understand that because I didn't have my dad from 7 years old, at this point we're blessed, even though we don't hang out or see each other. He's very busy. He's got whatever, but we're literally like our wall apart.
Yeah.
Literally, because our places are attached.
Yeah.
So, so he did that simultaneously while we did that. And
That's powerful.
right. So what happened was I was having this reoccurring theme because I have a loyalty to my dad now, because that's a whole nother story with my grandparents. My grandmother lost her mother at a very young age, and she ended up having to quit school to take care of her mother. And her grandfather was actually wealthy, and he was murdered outside of his business because he had money, and when he was closing shop, somebody murdered him, mugged and murdered him. And then she was so beautiful growing up that her father would tell her not to go out on the street because the gypsies would steal her. So she was always afraid. And then my grandfather was also brought up in a family of 5 kids. And then he was in the war, and he ended up being a disabled vet. But, being in the war, being unfaithful, no matter what, those two grandparents were my, the love. They were the ones that were the family, the love, everybody loves them. They made mistakes and they weren't perfect, and they called my grandma Machine Gun Rita because she's got a big mouth. But it didn't change the fact that there were things. It didn't change the fact that there were things that we had loyalties to.
You just told the story about your mom's side and your dad's side, and it's so similar. It's like a mirror of each side. It was just like attracts like in these systems, right? These systems have similar trauma.
But you would never see it on the outside.
Yeah.
That's the thing. My mom's parents ended up being like reclusive. I mean, they built a business, they made money, and there's so much to the story. But so we did this exercise, and then we were still having this reoccurring theme in our life as a family, where we always made just enough money, and it was just like really hard, and every 2 weeks I'm crying my eyes out about paying the bills, and I was going through all of these feelings. Peter's father had died, and it was like just was done. I was done. And my dad always caught me. It's like we barely ever see each other, but he only finds me when I'm crying about paying my bills. So he just said to me, he goes, why don't you go? Jonathan just had gone to school, and I needed more money because I had to pay for that. He's like, why don't you just go get a part-time job at Publix at 8:30 at night, and that's what my stepmom did when the girls were little, and when the kids go to sleep. And I, excuse me, but went into serious depression. Like serious depression, this is my life. And it was hard for me because I was so depressed that I really felt like my family would be better off without me. Like because I love them so much, I didn't want them to be affected by my depression. And so then after about 3.5, 4 days, wasn't a very long depression, and I didn't take medication for it, but I thought that I might need medication. So what happened was I just started writing, and I started talking to friends and asking them if it would be okay if I videoed that. So I would take like the selfie stick and take walks and put on my headphones and talk to my friends, just to kind of talk about subjects. They were totally cool to be open with whatever conversations came through. And ultimately I realized that I had a tremendous responsibility, and that I knew that the world that we were watching unfold is only the effects of the past and all of the trauma that everyone's going through, whether it comes to hate, racism, anti-Semitism, bullying, depression, suicide. It's all like this loyalty to the past. And I realized that the only way, like really the only way, was to assist in making this awareness. And so I was thinking about like how to do it and talking it through, and it turned out that I felt that I needed to, like I really wanted to have a hub. This hub where I can collect all the people doing the greatest things in the world and make it accessible for everyone else. Because I realized the value in education. I mean, not necessarily to have to be in a cult or have to go to school or this or that, but there's so much, everything's available to learn from right now. And the problem is there's so much out there that it's very challenging to help direct what people are watching and what people are connecting to, because whatever they're connecting to is really only what they know from the past and how the trauma is now playing out in our world. And then look where we're at now, where there's so many people around the world that literally have like no hope. Like the financial industry is disrupted, and every industry is disrupted because change is happening. So, so then again, the money thing came up, and I ended up doing this Deepak Chopra 40, was it 10 days? I don't remember. It was how many days. By the way, I don't remember a lot of stuff because I'm going to lead up to my accident this year. But so I did
days.
a 10-day Deepak Chopra
To
like
abundance.
path to abundance, and it turns out my dad did it also.
Oh wow.
And my brother and then my mother, we all ended up doing that. So as things unfolded, there's so much depth to this, but to the story, but I ended up following my passion. I found a partner. We ended up taking about 3 years together. I traveled all around the world to all of my relationships and some of her relationships or some people that she had connected with. And I had been day and night for 3 years at that point, like literally bleeding from my nose to where my blood pressure was through the roof, and just trying to figure out the strategy on how to make this great impact, because it's a great impact. And how do you do that?
Was that the Never Start?
That was Never Start. So we had a choice on which.
Can you explain a little bit what Never Start was?
Yeah. We had a choice on which key issue to focus on at the beginning of the relationship with my former business partner, but current partnership in other ways. So her name is Sylvia. So what she is this super high creative that is so passionate about helping change the world, and she creates all kinds of designs and songs and parodies, and she's also always trying to figure out how to engage different organizations that already have existing organizations that are doing good in the world. So we were in alignment. I took all of her ideas and I figured out a strategy on how to execute in order for the business to make money, and enough money that these organizations would be able to benefit from by doing give back items. When we had the choice of what to focus on, because you have to focus, I saw that she created a thing called Never Start, which you never have to quit if you never start, which was a youth at the time smoking, because vaping initially wasn't like this big thing, but as we start creating this, it became an epidemic in schools, and it was like I ended up in like the school board and all these meetings, and they were in a panic about what to do. And we had this really cool way of how to engage their students and bring education through a fun and engaging way with songs and activities. And it was called Never Start. You never had to quit if you never start. And so we're engaging mayors and this and that, but smoking cigarettes specifically also contributed to the most pollution on Earth, and the cancer, but not only from the smoker, but the person that's dealing with the secondhand smoke, and now there's thirdhand smoke, and all of the poisons that are going into our waters and our soil, and it's affecting literally everybody, because whether you smoke, you don't smoke, or you're around someone who smokes, or there's never any smoke in your house, your water is affected, your air is affected, everything's affected by this. So it really touched on so many other key issues that I found it most beneficial at that time to raise awareness about that. And currently, we are focused on hate, racism, anti-Semitism, bullying, through helping raise awareness of kindness, peace, love, and unity while learning about those key issues. So,
Can you say that again? I don't
so
think I followed.
so basically, we focused. We still have the ability to. It's not called Never Start.
Okay.
We still have the ability to deliver the curriculum and activities, which we will do on the key days, because it used to be called Kick Butts Day, but now they call it Take Down Tobacco.
So we incorporated a new company. Her and her
Okay.
partners separated,
Yeah.
and the Enlight Unite Foundation was born.
Okay.
That company is what she's talking about now.
Enlight Unite?
Enlight Unite
Okay.
Foundation.
Okay.
So to bring awareness
That makes sense.
and to unify.
Yeah.
And the premise of the organization is to focus on the key issues that are really affecting kids today, the world, to really change the narrative and to create a platform for them. So it's human trafficking, ending hate and racism, vaping prevention, mental health and wellness.
Right. So, okay. So eventually, Sylvia and I stopped working together on that campaign, and I asked her to please pilot that at the school that she was in, while I focused on ultimately our two visions. Even though they're so intertwined, they're so vast that it was just too hard to that I be involved in everything that she does, because she's a high creative, and it was too much for me. So I had to focus on what my purpose was in this mission. So we incorporated we have a new foundation and a business model, the Enlight Unite Foundation, and currently evolved to Education United LLC. So the Enlight Unite Foundation eventually, at this point, has evolved into, we had to pinpoint really who we are and what we're doing. So ultimately, I am the president and founder of the Enlight Unite Foundation, and my primary focus is on the activities of the Enlight Unite Foundation. When I went around the world with all of my relationships, my dearest friends and family, I ended up making a collaboration. First, okay, so I went through this depression after 3 or 4 days, and I went through this process of, we're going back. I went through this process of trying to figure out my purpose in life, the thing that I would want to jump up and get out of bed every day and do, and know that I'm doing my job in this world. I don't believe that we're controlled by astrology, but I do believe that there's an influence, and I learned that in my astrological signs that my north node or true node is Aquarius, and what I learned from one of my teachers in Kabbalah was that when you have your north node in Aquarius, you have tikkun, or correction, with everyone in the world. So how do you wake up knowing that you have to help the world do what's called in Hebrew tikkun haolam, which is the correction of the world? Get up and just take care of your family and then go get a part-time job at Publix. It's nothing wrong with that, because there are people that are very happy living like that, and that's fine. But if I know deep inside that that's not who I am, I can't allow myself to be that. So at this point of what happened was, now with the Enlight Unite Foundation, I have gone around the world and I made partnerships with the Peace Jam Foundation. The first one that I connected with was my friend Brandy Brown Kaufman. Now, Brandy is the president of 1 Billion Acts of Peace campaign, which this campaign is to inspire and log 1 billion acts of peace. It was supposed to be by 2020, and we've had to push the date because there are currently, I don't know, we can look it up, but say 80 million. So I said to Brandy, well, to get to 1 billion is a lot. So, how do we do that? And then I said, I really want to help you with this. So So she said, well, we brainstormed a little bit. She says, I want to make you an ambassador of the charity buzz and the celebrity buzz. And so what did that mean? It meant that I'm going to search for those other organizations that are doing great in the world and bring them, vet them, and they would have a buzz like every month, every week, whatever, on the website. And then the same thing with celebrities. So if a celebrity is either raising funds for or mentoring students or whatever, so we want to highlight them as well. And that was kind of my mission for 1 billion acts of peace, and the peace, and then the campaign comes from the Peace Jam Foundation. So the Peace Jam Foundation is an educational platform that's worldwide that educates students on key issues that plague our world. And the mentors of the program is a panel now. One of the Nobels passed away, but of 14 Nobel Peace Prize winners educating kids around the world on 10 most pressing key issues. So I said to Brandy, okay, well, it's called Peace Jam. Where's your jam? So I went on a mission to help. Then I met Sylvia. Like right after I got kind of anointed to this ambassadorship of celebrity buzz, charity buzz, and then Sylvia had all these songs and tchotchkes and how we started strategizing how we're going to engage all these celebrities and whatnot. So ultimately my focus started to be just that, and I started creating this new identity of the Enlight Unite Foundation. And immediately I ended up running into, so the Dalai Lama it was the first mentor of the students of the Peace Jam program.
Oh, wow.
So the Dalai Lama, the founders of the Peace Jam program were producing a film with the Dalai Lama called The Dalai Lama the Scientist. And the release was going to happen in August.
Okay.
This was in 2019. 2019. I was supposed to be there, but because my former partner and I broke up and I had to re-identify and take all my time and money and do that, I couldn't really go to the release of the Dalai Lama's film, which was in Venice. I was supposed to be there and I wasn't, and that was a weekend, so it was Shabbat. I went to, and I normally probably would have been depressed in my bed and just binge watching Netflix, but I decided to make a spiritual connection. On that Friday night, I went to Shabbat dinner and met one person that I'll talk about. But then on Saturday, I ended up at Shabbat lunch meeting Gad Elbaz, I didn't know who he was at the time, but I heard him talking, and he said he was in music, and my family's in music, so I was interested, like having a conversation, whatever. We started talking. I gave him my card, and ultimately we never connected. And then right before Rosh Hashanah, I ran out, he ran out, we were somehow ended up at the same place, and then we connected. So we met right after Rosh Hashanah, and we were talking about who he was and what he was doing, who I am and what I'm doing, and then we figured out that we want to do this together. And he does music. So, we were weaving, like trying to, I went to LA, I met his people, he met my people, we made relationships together, and we decided that we were going to do this together. Okay. I was going to focus on him, he was going to focus on us, and so I started learning who he was, and he's really all singing, like one of his top hits is called Hashem Melech, and Hashem Melech 2.0 with Nissim Black. It's Jewish music, but he revolutionized the Jewish music most Jewish music, it goes by different sects, whether it's, ultra-Orthodox or this one. They're very careful about music.
Yeah.
And he kind of unified every type of Jew, no matter what, to be under one roof, to come to his concerts, because his music was hip, but also was very spiritual.
Oh, wow.
So I had been listening to his songs and I'm going to go into more of a personal thing now and less of the business. But I've been listening to his songs over and over and over, and one of my favorites of God's music was, it's called Abale. So it's in Hebrew, but ultimately the song is about Abba, which is Hashem or God, and how God is always with us. Abale, abale, tamid itanu. So God is always with us, and really understanding. Like, I started really, really internalizing this and kind of intertwining it with my understanding of the systemic therapy and or treatment and family loyalty and the what I had done with the 40-day activity of, only having gratitude for those two people, but ultimately my Abba is Hashem or God or the divine source or the light. Like, literally, I don't care what you want to call it, but ultimately that's my connection.
Yeah.
It's all the same. There's one source.
Yeah.
So I was singing this over and over and over, and then and because, like, my past with the Holocaust trauma and Judaism traumas, I did immerse myself in Judaism for about 20 years. I was Shomer Shabbat, and I was Orthodox. I was all of that. I did that.
Oh, wow.
Now my husband and I are very happy in our life, and we have a little more balanced approach because there's more to that. Like, he's his father's only. He's the only sibling that's Jewish in his family, and he's got 5 brothers, and I'm not the only Jewish one, but the only Jewish of my family. So it just was interesting. But so I never really had, like, people would tell me all the time, talk to God, like it's your brother, like it's your friend, like it's your father, like it's your, talk to God. And it was always so weird for me. Like, it was easier for me to talk to my grandma that passed away than it was for me to talk to God. Like, I couldn't ever, it was very awkward for me. I could never feel comfortable ever. It always was so weird. Like, what do you, I couldn't do it. So I was listening to this song, and then on March 3rd, 2020, I'll back up. I'm going to back up. So in February, all of the years, my husband and I have never even paid for a babysitter. Like, we're always with our kids, like, always. And when he would have to travel for work, he would go on his own. And when I had to travel for work, I would go on my own because someone always stayed with the kids. So we had 3 trips together that we were going to have our kids, and we were going together. So first we went to Orlando, and then we went to New York and to LA. But I got sick and God got sick, and it's pretty sure, because coronavirus wasn't a thing back then, pretty sure we had coronavirus because other people that eventually got sick that Purim ended up testing positive for coronavirus. So whatever. So now these trips that we did together, at that point, God was making a commitment to come be with us for 40 days to structure what we're doing together. So he packed up his life. He shipped his car. He was going to show up at our house on March 11th.
And he's based in LA?
He was based at that point in New York, but he was really from Israel.
Okay.
Okay. But he was staying, at that time in New York. So what happened was, I'd been listening to his music. I really wanted to get to know this person through his music, and I told you I'd been connecting with Hashem Melech and Abale and like really started making a new connection. So on March 3rd, 2020, I was driving to carpool, and I see one license plate that says cry, one that says beg, one that says ask, and then 3 of them, one that said, I don't know how many, said Leah, Leah, and maybe 2 or 3 of those, and then I saw 333s, 33C, 333, and I texted my husband. I'm like, oh my God, like somebody's trying to communicate with me. It's like everywhere I'm looking, it's like all these messages. It was so clear. that there were messages, and the messages were clear because it was cry, beg, ask, Leah, 333, and if you look it up, there's always a spiritual meaning and connection. So that was March 3rd at Carpool. On March 4th, every morning, I don't have to wake up. My husband did the mornings for school, but I would wake up every single morning because I didn't want to. We have 4 kids, and I wanted to make sure that my kids knew I was there for them every single morning. Even if I'm sitting on my chair with my coffee, they can hug me, they can kiss me, I could talk to them, I can remind them, whatever. I'm involved in that way. They know I'm there for them to do their hair, whatever it is. So that morning, then Peter takes the kids to school for carpool. It's maybe a whole round trip of 30 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes. It's my only time that's really I'm alone. So every morning, what do? You drink your coffee, you check your social media, catch up on a series on TV. That was my basic morning when he would take the kids to school. But this morning was different because I remembered that I was getting these messages, and I sat on my couch. I sat on our couch, and I looked around the room, and I said thank you to every single physical thing in my house, including the dust. Mm-hmm. I said I was feeling gratitude for every single thing in our life, including our love as a couple, our children, our healthy children, our opportunities, like truly basking in gratitude. But this time I was saying it, everything out loud, not just feeling it, saying it out loud. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so grateful, I'm so grateful, I'm so grateful, I'm so grateful. And then I went upstairs because I actually had a deadline, because at that point we were about to get fully funded for our business and our foundation and our LLC for all of our activities through a couple of guys that had committed to go raise the money for us. So I had a lot to do to get a lot of stuff prepared. So I go upstairs, I take a shower, I open my computer, and I start to work. And then I remembered cry, beg, ask. Because at that point, I had taken about 20 to 30 minutes just saying thank you and feeling grateful. Then I remembered cry, beg, ask. So I locked our bedroom door, and out loud I cried and I begged and I asked, and I was very specific. And it was the very first time I had really, connected with this divine source verbally, emotionally, with everything that I had, just really super clear about everything that I wanted to see in our life and all the reasons why, and all the reasons why we're worthy of this, financial infusion, because we have so much to do and we are so powerful and we shouldn't have this burden, and we need a new car, we need a new home. We needed to get money into the business. Like, I was very clear. I can't, this is all paraphrasing, whatever. So then Peter comes to the door, and it's locked. And why is it locked? Because none of the kids are home. So he comes in and he's like, why is the door locked? And I said, well, because I was crying and I didn't want to affect you. And he's like, what are you crying about? I said, our life. But it's not, it wasn't personal at that time. I didn't say that, but I didn't want to affect him. And of course, he's my husband and he loves me and he sees me in pain. And I just told him I'm crying about our life. So it affected him. That morning, we had 3 of our kids that had to go to the dentist. So I left the house. I left the house. I go to pick them up, and I get to this intersection. It's right at Hallandale. The corner where Barnett's was, right at Hallandale Beach Boulevard and Dixie Highway. Mm-hmm. So I get to that intersection, and I'm driving through the intersection, and all of a sudden I get this reel. Like a reel, in your mind, you get a reel of every single car accident that happened in our life, because the car accident, my first one that we were involved in, it was right before my parents' divorce. And there's so many miraculous stories about that car accident and everything anyway, but every car accident, and I said out loud to God, I do not need that experience. I released that loyalty to my parents. I said it out loud. I released the loyalty to have an accident when things were going hard. So I pick up the 3 kids, take them to the dentist, and anyway, I'm a germaphobe, and this was the onset of coronavirus where it started becoming like very aware that there was this virus out there. So I'm sitting in the pediatric dentist, and I'm composed because now I have my 3 kids with 3 of our 4 with me. And normally when I would come home, I would change my clothes because I was just sitting in a, especially now with the pandemic. But I was so exhausted, so drained from this experience I had that morning between crying and dealing with all of this stuff. And so I just crawled in my bed and I went to sleep. I had 45 minutes before now I had to pick up Jacob from school. So then Peter calls and my alarm goes off exactly the same time. He's like, do you want me to go pick up Jacob? Oh, you're sleeping. I'll go. I'm like, no, I'll go. He's like, I'll go. I'm like, no, I'll go. I said, I'm getting up right now. I'm going. You just stay. You work. It's fine. I run downstairs. I make a coffee. I'm running out the door and I hear a voice loud and clear, go back and kiss your husband before something happens and let him know that you guys are okay. Because of earlier when I was crying, that let him know that so I went in to his office and I hugged him and I kissed him and I let him know that we were okay, that I am just doing my own release. And then he got up to hug me. So we did a quick hug and I ran out the door. I'm driving back to that intersection that's at Hallandale Beach Boulevard and Dixie Highway. And the light's green, so I continue to go forward. There was no cars around anywhere, not in front of me, not here, not there, whatever. I'm driving, and all of a sudden, I look to my left, and there's a big bus coming directly at me. And I looked up to my left, and I screamed out loud, "Are you serious? Is this really going to happen? Am I really going to be hit by a bus right now?" Like, I yelled that at God. I was like, what? Are you serious? So then I remembered, and this is not the first time this happened, my sensei from when I was in martial arts as a young girl right after my parents' divorce. I was maybe 8 years old. My sensei used to say the best defense is to get out of the way. And the other cars were starting to go. If I had gone, I would have been spun out into oncoming traffic. There was no one to my right. And I turned the wheel and the bus hit. I immediately took my phone and called Peter. I'm like, I was just, go get Jacob from school. I was just in a major car accident. The cop came to my window immediately, and then they immediately called the paramedics or whatever. So just happened that there were 2 Hallandale Beach police officers that saw the whole thing. This bus ran a red light, smashed into me. But what I wanted to say about that moment was when I said that out loud, I was cradled and I was protected and I was basically told that don't worry, you'll be okay. And it happened in slow motion. Even what I said out loud to you, there was no way I could have said that if you went on would be regular time that we know, because it happened so fast. But I actually said those things out loud, and so time actually slowed down in that moment to protect me, because I'm not ready to leave this world. But I had asked for very specific things, and the very next week when God showed up on March 11th and his car was showing up on the 12th, and he was going to stay here and we were going to go look for a place for him, the whole freaking world shut down. And he's an entertainer and he lost all of his work and whatever. And I'm like, just stay with us.
That's terrible.
So, yeah, it was terrible. And it was weird because I couldn't go to doctors and finally found whatever. I ended up having 5 surgeries. I lost my front teeth. I had 3 spine surgeries. But what I wanted to say was, it was really like sometimes you have to be smashed in order to be rebuilt. And I knew, I mean, you can ask anybody that I spoke with, and maybe it was the steroids that I ended up being on, or eventually the pills I ended up taking, where I had a heightened sense of awareness. But the thing is that I really kind of feel like an alien. Like all these angels came in to swoop in to protect me, and I was infused with some new power that was going to help us on this mission. Like, I just knew that. Like, so no matter what I was going through, whether it was pain, confusion of the world shutting down, 7 of us trapped in a house for 2.5 months in a tiny 1,600 square foot place, and trying to figure out what's going to happen. Everything changed. Our work changed. The kids, there was so much going on. Then I had lost my teeth, which my smile, it was my thing. I'm even in a music video, like smiling, like my whole life. My smile has been like so radiant, and I gained weight and I can't move and I'm trapped in a bed, and every time I was having a spine surgery I was scared I was going to die, and my family, and like all these things going on. No matter what, I always knew 100% without a doubt that this was from God or the divine source to give me what I asked for. Ultimately, and I went through a lot because this was like $1.5 million case.
Jeez.
And I was told that by attorneys that are very in the business, whatever. But and then they had offered me the policy, and I was struggling with that because it wasn't that much. But ultimately, on the morning of the eve of Rosh Hashanah in September, the attorney says the courier has your check. And then there was all kind of miraculous things that had happened with getting that check in the bank right before Rosh Hashanah. So we go to one bank. The minute we get there, well, they tell us that it's going to take now 9 days to clear any of it. I'm like, what do you mean? The bank's up the street. Like, everything's
digital. So this is from the settlement.
The settlement from the accident.
The accident.
Right.
Oh, so was it a city?
It was no. It wasn't. It was a private transport.
Oh, okay.
So the check comes in, right? And we go to the bank, and they're going to hold it for 9 days. So we said, forget it. We're going to go to the bank where the check is from. We're going to open an account, and it's going to clear because it's the same bank. So we go to the bank. As soon as we get there, the entire nation of that bank shuts down. The whole nation.
Oh, wow.
The network. So Peter says, let's go to the other Bank of America in Aventura. So we go there, and we're waiting because the system is still down. And who walks in? But back when I was pregnant with our first child, I met this hypnotherapist. And eventually I had worked with him about the issues with my grandparents. And I did hypnotherapy, and it was a lot of my trauma was from that time. And I remember the conversation that was happening to me under hypnosis. But the day before, Peter says, oh, I followed Israel Maya on Facebook. He's got some great stuff going. He shows up.
Oh, wow.
And actually that day I wasn't really focused on the check or even Rosh Hashanah as much as I was focused on helping a friend of mine who was homeless that has a disabled son. And I was on the phone helping her. So he walked in, we connected, and he gave me a donation to help this woman, and just was happening like that. So by that night, the check cleared in our bank account on Rosh Hashanah.
Oh, wow.
Which was exactly a year from when God and I connected, which was exactly going into a new Jewish year. So, and the amount was exactly cleared our debt, all the debt that we had from the past, everything, including personal debt, including...
Oh, my gosh.
All our debt cleared. We were able to buy 2 new cars, which we needed cars. It's what I said we needed. We needed cars. We were able to put money into our business and put money to save a house. Exactly what I asked for.
Wow.
So, but I was still having surgeries, and I was still not well, and, and it wasn't that much, and I started then getting depressed about there's not enough for me to heal. I ended up again working with Sophie. Things evolved where we were working, she was helping me detox from all of the pills and the anesthesia she has this detox machine. But I had more time with Sophie, and I was explaining to her how much value I had from doing this 40-day exercise of stepping into my own life and my own destiny, and keep reminding myself that because I have 4 kids, my biggest panic is that I'm afraid to be Jewish. And I'm around Jews. And if my kid wears a kippah or tzitzit or they're walking to Shabbat, I literally was spending 90+% of my Shabbats in a panic that my kids are Jewish. I would go to shul and I would feel like I would sit in services in a panic that somebody's going to come walk and shoot us up.
Yeah.
I was living this, and it was horrible, even till recently. So, again, I worked with Sophie with physically detoxing and also spiritually understanding a lot of things. And she was very helpful because I also create a lot of entanglements because I'm a healer and I'm an empath, and I already have so much going on. I have all these entanglements, and I always try to help everyone. And so she helped me with even my verbiage or understanding the paradigm, the dynamic, understanding certain relationships that changed, that I was furious about, that people just changed or lied to my face, and she would help me through understanding and having a little bit of more of a perspective, and additionally was very useful in my relationship with God, and kind of weaving us together, having more patience, because just because I see the vision doesn't necessarily mean everyone's going to be in the timeline that I see, and there are multiple timelines, and there are multiple ways that situations can play out. So then I kind of started learning things at a whole new level, because I already understood that everything that's playing out with him are his burdens and his loyalties that he needs to release, and stuff, of course, in our own lives, and also creating healthy boundaries and contracts and certain things like that in order to, make sure everything is very clear. So I would definitely say that having the ability to work with a family constellations therapist, as well as systemic healing, has more than tremendously impacted our lives. It's helped us take, when we came to that fork, it always helps us to stay empowered, stay on the mission, release the loyalties when we recognize them, because it's our entire history of a whole different era. And look, first of all, we've just entered the golden age of Aquarius. It's a new era. And the Jews have been screaming for Mashiach, the Messiah. Everybody's wanting the Messiah, whether you're Christian or Jewish, or this new world to come and whatever. And the seed of it is right now. That's why all this craziness is happening. A lot of my friends and family are extremely depressed. There's a crazy divide and all of that. I just don't even focus on it. Like, literally, when anything's upsetting me, I literally immerse myself in some Netflix or Prime or series, because I'm trying not to focus on that, so my only focus can be on how to unfold a better world.
Yeah.
Well, we figured out a strategy on how to do that, and that's what Peter and I work on day and night. The strategy on how, because yes, we can get adults that have already lived, or even teenagers, the millennials, whatever, they've lived their life until now. They are responding to all of our ancestors' mistakes and benefits, both simultaneously, because our world is great.
Yeah.
I mean, really, like,
really
all
is.
the systems work. They all work, but unfortunately, with greed and murder, like all the things that you're not supposed to do, like in the 10 Commandments, bottom line, don't
But it's
steal.
also part of us.
Yeah, but doing this release of all the stories and embracing my life and my destiny, and if say we can get a critical mass of collective consciousness to release all the stories and embrace their life and their destiny from today, every action that we take. I'm not saying our history doesn't matter. I always use for reference the movie Bruce Almighty, where Morgan Freeman as God pulls out that big filing cabinet from the wall of all of the past experiences. I always see all of my past experiences because I have so many traumatic past experiences that I've had to do a lot of work to release, not in order not to pass that on to my kids. I freak out.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been held up by gunpoint. I've been raped. People have stolen from me. I was in holding, been arrested, you name it. Like, there's so many crazy experiences that have happened to me. I was molested, you name it, anything bad, aside from me murdering someone or like actually, like, you know, dying or being put in prison. Pretty much it's in my past. So I never wanted to pass that to my kids.
You know, you raise an interesting point. And one of the things that we offer in the programs that I oversee is students create a roadmap to their future. So they determine what they want to do. They think about what their passion is. And as I'm listening and thinking about it, if they don't release the patterns of the past, they're really not free to really tap into what they truly want to do. And there are these chains binding them from activating their entire power.
It seems like it starts with an act of assuming responsibility.
I'm thinking even more than that, to incorporate something that takes them through a basic meditation, like what we did before we started.
Yeah.
And some type of infusion of the family constellation therapy that indirectly allows them to tap into where their patterns are to release them.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying because you know, kind of in concert with what Leah was saying is it usually this movement starts with an assumption of responsibility. And that assumption of responsibility at its core is assuming the responsibility for the co-creation of the dynamic.
Right.
And when you're in that position, when you look at it from a systemic lens, you can say, why am I participating in this dynamic over and over again, and assuming you're, you know, like I was representing it was a couple years ago, I was in a constellation and I was representing the perpetrator in a family constellation, and there was this woman that was she was Russian, from a ethnic Russian minority, that was systemically abused, right? So ethnic cleansing, and so the person that was representing the victim was looking at me and saying, "How dare you?" You know, like, how dare you do this to me? And so the person that was actually doing the constellation was kind of to my right. And my representation in the constellation is like, I'm going to curse because we can curse on this podcast. I'm like, who the fuck do you think you are? We're the same. Yeah. You need me as much as I need you. So it's like it was this huge revelation for me. It's like it's the victim and the perpetrator need each other to complete the dynamic. And so a victim needs a perpetrator as much as a perpetrator needs a victim. And so what it seems like you guys are doing and doing is that I'm going to assume responsibility. Now I can do something about it. Like that intake that you're kind of doing.
And then go one step further to incorporate exercises that allow them to release. Because I'm thinking about when Leah was talking about Judaism.
Yeah.
You know what essentially happens is there's a Torah portion for every week of the year.
Yeah.
And they read it. And you are essentially rereading the past.
Yeah.
And recreating the past to continue and continue and continue.
Yeah.
If you keep recreating the past, you keep the present the same.
Exactly.
And I think what's happening on a political level, on a world level, is the paradigm is not only changing,
Yeah.
but the whole system is falling apart.
Yeah.
Meaning not the system, but the ingrained ways that everything is happening. The voice of the people.
Yeah.
Everything is changing to bring about a new
Absolutely.
time and a new way.
I profoundly think that 2020 for me has been that. Has been so when you look at systemic work a lot, this is what usually happens. So you'll be like, I'm gonna do a constellation. So you make up your mind and you're like, I'm gonna go do a constellation about, X traumatic thing that happens. And then you wake up late, your kid did something, threw a bar of soap down the toilet, and then you got to fix that, and then the dog runs away, and whatever that is, there's almost a scenario where the system prevents from changing, right? So it wants to keep itself.
Resistance.
Because that resistance is dangerous, right? And so the heavier the trauma,
Right.
the bigger the resistance.
Right.
And so when you're talking, I was like, this is that kind of because you're in through this transformation process that is extremely profound, that has this systemic debt of the some of the largest atrocities in humanity.
Yeah.
There's going to be a massive resistance against, because the system wants to keep itself.
Yeah.
And so usually when you do that type of work, you get really sick. Sometimes when you have a massive movement, you get really sick. You get a bad cold, and you're kind of like, your defenses are down because you've gone through this
The same way you do
transformation.
a cleanse, all of
Exactly.
the stuff comes out.
And so I think 2020, in some capacity, is a sign that we're moving in the right direction.
100%.
It's like I posted this on the ZuluOne podcast. I was like, thank you, President Trump, for showing us where you need to heal, where we need to heal.
What's interesting to me is education.
Yeah.
Forget what we're doing for the moment. Don't forget, but put it aside. The way kids are educated, it's the same thing. It has not shifted. Yet the world is changing so massively.
Yeah.
The jobs that exist in the last 5 years, within a 10-year period, they won't exist anymore because AI, artificial intelligence, it's all going to be done by robots.
Yeah.
So if the landscape is changing, but the education system is not, they're ill-prepared for the future. So where I'm going with all of this is that the systems of the past have to change on every level, and that will facilitate in the change. But what came to me is that if the younger generation doesn't get to the point where they release the loyalties that they have to their ancestors and their parents, yes, they can find a direction and do all these things, but those patterns will still continue to exist.
Absolutely,
Which is why, as I'm really sitting here and listening to Leah, and if you don't get to the root of it to begin to unravel the equation, everything may look different, but the patterns will remain the same.
Exactly.
Which is what happened before her accident and all of those other things.
And the crisis about that is the fact that a child can only a child learns from what they see and what they hear and what they're taught. So, and now with the internet and it being right on a phone, or it's just everyone's on technology, even if they're not watching that, who the hell knows how it's being coded on the back end and what data they're picking up through their eyes. So the reality is unless we can assist in unfolding a brighter future by being aware of the past, but not inundating, but
honoring it.
Honoring the past, because look where we are.
Yeah, of course.
Everybody has a home and running water, and life is so much easier than it was for our ancestors even 100 years ago, 80 years ago.
Yeah.
So honoring it, but recognizing that we have to innovate, we have to do it better, we need to do it with kindness, we need to do it with love, we don't need to be divided, but we need to unify. Everyone has a role to play, and maybe our role is not the same, but there's value. Also because there's so much content out there that we I feel that it's one of our jobs in this world to make sure that we can help with the focus. We can help with communities of like-minded people working together on projects that will make a difference, that will help clean up the past of the it's not, I wouldn't say that it's negative, because it's really just like, if you're going to build a building, there's going to be debris and dirt and stuff to throw out.
It's a pivot. You have to go into the mud to go then bring into the light. So people have become isolated and separated through this pandemic and this time. And now things are starting to move together. They're using alternative means. They're doing virtual concerts, virtual meetings, and so on to bring mankind back together. So it's already turned the corner.
There's an interesting concept that I've been going through a lot lately, and it's about carrying things lightly. Because you have flexibility, rather than carrying something with such force that you're tethered to it. Just if you carry something lightly, you can have some flexibility about putting it down for a while. You don't have this death grip on things, and so it doesn't leave space for growth or healing. It's like if there's and when I'm always very cognizant about when I talk about the past, is to look at it lightly, right? Is to look at it without judgment, because we reject what we become. We become what we reject. Is that places like I'm gonna become, like what happens a lot with these social movements that have happened. It's the victims of the social movement turn into the perpetrators, and so we're rejecting this, this larger thing, and we're becoming that thing in itself. And so it's like I think that we're evolving to a place where we can start looking at things a little more softly, without judgment, and assuming our responsibility of the co-creation of these new dynamics. It's just we're part of this system where there's no, if you're a human being and you're alive, you're part of that. I'm both the perpetrator and the victim. I'm both a Nazi and a Holocaust survivor. I'm both, apartheid. I'm part of slavery and a slave owner. I'm all those things of part of my existence, inherited existence from all the generations behind. I assume responsibility. I assume responsibility for all the men and all the women, because I'm both. I'm part of my mother, and I'm part of my father, and I'm part of all the generations.
So you come to a place of acceptance. There's an interesting thing that just popped up. We watched a movie called The Shack.
The Shack,
Yeah.
yeah.
Make a long story short.
Yeah.
This guy, his daughter is murdered, and it's
Yeah.
very traumatic, and he can't move past it.
Terrible.
And he has one of those things that you see in movies where he basically falls, and he meets God and Jesus and some female.
He meets Oprah.
God is female. And they take him through a series of experiences, and he goes to this cave, and he meets Judgment, I believe is who it is. And
Ooh, I just got goosebumps.
she's flashing, it's in a cave, and there are rocks, and it's playing a movie. It's a movie, so it's playing. And it's showing him and his dad, what happened to his dad, because his dad abused him. It shows the abuse his father went in that created him to be the way to abuse him. It shows the guy that killed his daughter, what he went through as a child and the abuse he went. And it goes on and on and on. And Judgment says, now judge, which of your kids will go to heaven and which one will go to hell? And he's freaking out because it's real. He doesn't realize how real it is. And then he sees it and he's like, I can't. And he's freaking out and he drops and he surrenders. And the point of what they're showing him is that this guy did all these horrible things because of what was done to him.
Yeah.
And he comes to a place and he sees his daughter in heaven of acceptance, and then moves forward with his life. And I think the hardest thing in listening to what you're saying in Leah's story, to have acceptance that everything happened by divine order, and to accept it and then to rechart your future.
Yeah. That's that assumption of responsibility. It's like just kind of assuming the weight of the responsibility of it, right? That's so powerful. That's systemic. That in itself is a systemic, process. The same thing as Frozen 2, into the unknown. You guys, I've got Annabelle's 4, so
Yeah.
watched Frozen 2 a million times, right?
John, we know that you're watching it. We know.
So, but we're watching the movie, and so I'll spoiler alert for Frozen 2, but she finds out that the ancestors, right? So her parents had done some stuff to another tribe or another group of people in the kingdom, and they were kind of tethered to this dynamic, and so until she goes into the unknown, which is the abyss of understanding of her psyche, is kind of like this kind of meta understanding of it. She goes down, and it's not until they're able to bring that out for the unknown known is that the healing can happen, and they fix the place, and everything freezes and everything's happy, and they sing a lot. So it's those things that and that's exactly what you're talking about. It's like to bring the unknown known, and that's what family constellation does. It's the hidden dynamics of the family become known and understood. That's it.
So
you, 1 second. So you're sharing something, and so prior to coming here, we did the 40 days. I did the activities, released a lot with my dad. Did it, helpful. So my mom recently went into the hospital.
Yeah.
last night.
So talks with my wife a bit, talked with me a bit. I'm getting frustrated with her because it's like the inability to help oneself, but to the point that it's triggering. And talked to my wife this morning. Then I talked with her, and I'm like, holy shit, what are you getting angry about? And I realized that there is an enormous loyalty that I have with her that was not conscious to me. There's this loyalty of a mindset. There's this loyalty of this attention. There's this loyalty on so many levels. It was like panim right in my face.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my
I love
God, we're
panim.
going to sit with him. We're going to talk. It's loyalty.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Yeah, his
Here it
mom.
is.
His mom was calling this morning, and I'm trying to troubleshoot because we weren't in the same room, and his phone was where I was, and she was talking to me, and
'Cause
I'm
I don't
trying
pick
to
up the phone.
no, but I'm trying to figure out, is this really an emergency? Because we have this podcast.
Yeah.
You know.
Then, but then I'm defending her. So she's giving her perspective.
Yeah.
And she's a little bit stronger, and there's less empathy. And I'm like, look, she's 90 years old. Cool it, relax. You don't have to.
Yeah.
What am I? I'm defending her. That's the loyalty.
Yeah, but I wasn't.
I don't mean it like that.
I just
You
was
know.
trying to figure out if it was an emergency for him to run over there, or can he go after the podcast?
Yeah.
Because, the reality is that it doesn't matter. So going back to the accountability.
The reality is this, is that your mother is so loyal to the system that anything to maintain it.
Yeah, but that's exactly what the conversation was.
Yeah, that's it.
She doesn't
That's
feel
it.
well.
Yeah.
She doesn't
Yeah.
feel well, and she's worried. The only thing that's bothering her is that, she needs to take her medicine, and she needs to eat something, and she needs to take a shower. This is what she's worried about, that she's putting herself into this anxiety and panic because she doesn't feel well. She really needs to rest, but she's so loyal to this schedule that she has that she can't do, and she wants...
Not necessarily that. Saying, thank you for showing us where to heal.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for assuming that burden for the family and showing us where to heal.
I'm going to use that because my immediate thing is, do you have a roof over your head?
Yeah.
Do you have money to eat? Do you have this? So
But it's a judgment.
You're 100% correct. Do you have money?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a
so
judgment,
that what
yeah.
you're so worried about, how, look around.
Yeah,
What are you
yeah,
worried?
yeah.
So I missed the entire. So now I have your wisdom, and I'm going to use it. I'm going to see
Yeah.
her later, but I'm
Because
going to
it's a
shift it.
Yeah, it's a shift, and so this is the kind of the clue for me is always this, is like if something doesn't make sense, it's not about that. It's a superposition. That's what it's called. It's called a superposition. So if I'm like, 2 plus 2 equals 4, and everybody knows that 2 plus 2 equals 4, but we're having a discussion, and you're saying 2 plus 2 equals 9? Like, that doesn't make sense. So I'm like, what's behind what you're saying? Is it fear? Is it maintaining the system? Is it maintaining, like, the fear of transformation? Is it the loyalty to maintaining that?
You mean in this case from her perspective?
Exactly. So it's like there's a superposition. There's something on top of what she's talking about. It may be many things, maybe layers of things, but there's definitely a superposition.
So it's to be objective to unearth.
Exactly. It tells you that with when an argument isn't logical, there's a superposition. It gives you from the listener's perspective, the person receiving the information gives you a clue to what's happening. It's like, this isn't about this. This is about something else.
So I have a lot of heightened abilities. So one of my most heightened abilities is the ability to get messages from souls that want to bring a message, and it happens in many different ways. But one of the ways that I learned is this. Like they say before you go to bed every night, like shut yourself down, make sure that you're in a place, say thank you to all of your, don't think about your worries, just kind of put yourself in your mind of gratitude for being alive, whatever it is.
The Louise Hay nightly meditations.
Right, right.
Yeah.
You can heal your life like that in order to be lighter so that your soul can elevate. Because if you're bogged down with worries, you can have nightmares and anxiety and not sleep and raise your blood pressure even, whatever. So one morning I woke up and I knew that I really, 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 I don't always know who's communicating with me, and it's fine. But this morning I kind of really knew it was my grandma. So in Judaism, when I had learned Kabbalah and also quantum physics, and also with Masaru Emoto, the consciousness of water molecules. So what I realized, and one of my really favorite friends that actually died and came back to life, and she's a healer, she's amazing. You got to see Shekinah and Sananda, her husband. So I'll introduce you. But she's like, don't tell people they evaporate. But basically, because we're mostly water, everybody's like so confused, like, what's the soul? Is it real? And what happens when you sleep? And what happens when you die? And in Judaism, you learn that when you're sleeping, you're actually 1/60th of death. You actually kind of die at 1/60th, and your soul goes up and it does its work and right? So you'll find many people are like Missouri, the show me state.
Yeah.
So let's show you how, if we're made of mostly water, and water holds memory, and water is holding the memory even of being in the womb of your parents, and DNA spins, and the DNA spin, once a particle is connected, it's always connected, and no matter how far in time and space, and the DNA is spinning the same. That's how we can recognize who is in our bloodline. So what happens is all of that memory is in your water that then when you're sleeping is evaporating into the clouds, and consciousness is collective. So now your water is going to go into the clouds that is within the collective consciousness, just how the cloud works for computers.
Yeah.
So then every morning in Judaism you pray. And you pray first thing in the morning, and one of the things you actually pray for is either the dew half the year or the rain. So whatever's going to go into the cloud is basically, if that dew, that morning dew that comes in straight into your field wherever you live, because your water collected up and then comes back down from the clouds as dew, so that you actually walk through that force field of water of all the other people in the experiences, depending on how you're vibrating. So what happened was, I was walking after I woke up, and I had like this, sometimes you feel like this switch of awareness, and now all of a sudden you have like this new boost. I started walking like this because I was after my accident, and I needed to walk in order to heal. And I started walking, and all of a sudden I see like these lights lighting up my path. And the message that I got that morning was, because I raised my awareness, I was being taught that by recognizing my accountability, my responsibility before I go to sleep in order to align myself into the all good, so that my water will collect up into the consciousness of higher vibration people to be in my experience for the next day. That's how God works with humans, and how the angels of our ancestors that have passed away, that should we continue to play out the experiences of our past or our loyalties of our ancestors, they actually hover over us like a cloud. And the way that it's perpetuated on a quantum physics level with quantability, the ability to quantify it, is that our water is collecting into the clouds, which then brings us our physical experiences, and all the people that need to be in our unfolding of the day is going to depend on how we vibrate and how much we take responsibility for everything that comes in our way, whether it be through perspective or actions. So what I realize is also, we learn about this too, about the wheels of the soul, but understanding that the ones that did pass away, they no longer sleep, and their consciousness is no longer the water that's being brought up into the clouds to be the dew or the rain.
Have you ever heard of Rupert Sheldrake?
No.
So Rupert Sheldrake is a British biologist. And I think he went to Oxford, and he's on kind of the fringes of science. And he came up with this theory called morphic resonance. And it says that there's a field of intelligence between all things that come from the same place of origin. And he found this in biology, and says that DNA in itself doesn't account for the fact that you're going to be a woman and I'm going to be a man, and a plant's going to be a palm tree and a pine tree, and etc. And that that there's, from what he theorizes, is that there's an additional field of knowledge and experience that comes in through these beings, right? And so that the collective experience that we have comes from this thing called morphic resonance. And the interesting thing is that Rupert Sheldrake's wife has been doing family constellations for 30 years. And so his theory has been almost solidified by the consistent, repetitive, experiential, workshop that you can see in family constellations. Like, this happens over and over and over again.
Right.
And so this theory of morphic resonance has been tried, true, and tested, and you can repeat it. We can do a constellation right now, and you'll see this happen. And so it talks about, like, I'm very, I'm trying to be very technical, right? And so when I first started doing constellations, I was like, my mom and sister joined a cult, children of the sun or whatever, and we're going to drink some Kool-Aid at some point, and we're all going to die, right?
Oh, so your mom and sister found it first?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They did a constellation. So my mom did her first constellation in Romania in 2007, I think. Wow. And I was like, so when my mom and sister told me about it, I was 25, I think. I think it was 25 or 26. And I'm like, oh, okay, so now I'm just going to be me going through the world because my mom and sister went crazy. They were like this constellation thing and, people, and it was like this whole thing. And I was like, they lost their minds.
My parents said that when I started Kabbalah.
Yeah, they're like, they lost their mind. They joined a cult. Yeah. And it wasn't until, like, I did my first constellation, and I represented somebody. And I'm like, okay, hook, line, and sinker, this thing is real. Okay, I get it. But I don't understand it. And it wasn't until I came across this theory for Rupert Sheldrake that created this world for me. Like, created a consistent, logical line of understanding between the phenomenological and the scientific. And so there's this clear line of it. And I've experienced shamanic constellations, structural constellations, systemic, psychological, like everything in between. I've been with a shaman doing, did an ayahuasca trip, like everything in between. And the only kind of consistent line between all things is this theory of morphic resonance. And it talks about all things have this inherited knowledge that comes from it.
Yeah, called the Akashic records, or the quantum field.
Yeah, the quantum field, Christianity calls it the Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit, the Spirit, and the ghost in the machine. The
In
karma.
Hebrew, it's called the Ruach HaKodesh.
Yeah.
It's the Ruach is like the wind, or like the wind, or like the soul of the divine.
Yeah, that's kind of. This kind of gets a little personal, but have you guys ever seen somebody pass away? Like, been present when somebody passed away?
Yeah.
I was there for my grandfather passing away. Yeah, and it's like, that's my grandfather, and then when they pass away, that's like, that person's no longer there. That's just
the body.
It's like this. It's like the chair.
Empty.
It's like an empty vessel. It's an
exactly.
incredible experience to see somebody go through that transformation.
Yeah.
It's like they're there, and then you have no attachment to that body.
And when you see it after, once they're dead for a while, it looks like it's made of plastic.
Yeah.
There's no essence, no life.
There's no life. And it's like, oh, he's
Yeah.
returned to the non-physical.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, whatever you want to call that.
Yeah.
Like, you whatever you want to call that, he's returned to the non-physical consciousness, and it's a beautiful experience. It's to see the gift that somebody gives you that. But that's talks about, we're just these things that are inhabiting these shells, rather than anything else.
Right. It's the vessel. It's the vessel and the soul. But ultimately, while we're alive, even though we're in the lowest world, because we're playing out all of the past experience, whatever. But what I was getting back to before is that we're in a new era.
Mm.
So sometimes I really, really, really struggle with Judaism, because every week we're reading these horrible stories in the Torah. But the reality of it, it's a multi-dimensional text that unless you're learning the lessons from the stories and understand that the reason why that was given and why they use it as it's one of the biggest tools is because if you understand where you came from, these are the lessons and these are the guidelines on what you need to do in order not to be that. But unfortunately, if someone doesn't understand it at that level and they're listening to the stories or whatever, I have fear that it's going to perpetuate.
As long as it's objective.
Yeah.
Right.
As long as you don't entangle with it.
Right.
So,
like the story of Cain and Abel. Like, do you guys know who Jordan Peterson is?
No.
He's I talk to him. I talk a lot about him. I don't do that many podcasts, and I usually bring him up. But he looks at the story of Cain and Abel from a psychological perspective, and the story of Cain and Abel is the story of the victim and the perpetrator.
Yeah.
And not only that, Cain's family is cursed for 7 generations. So 7 generations they'll have, they'll have this tragedy, right? In constellations, you go 7 generations back.
Code.
These stories have profound significance in the architecture of our consciousness. And that's why those stories are so important.
So, but they say in the time of the coming of Messiah, Mashiach, that it will no longer need to exist. None of the stories exist anymore. It's a whole new consciousness. It's a whole new level of awareness. And then, you can bring Jesus, Yeshua ben Yosef, aka God, Messiah. There's many names. Jesus Christ, Jesus the Christ. Ultimately, his name was Yeshua ben Yosef. So I believe that one perspective of Yeshua ben Yosef, Jesus, Messiah, why I believe that particular vessel, that particular soul holds the consciousness of Messiah is because in Judaism, the only way to be righteous, or the highest way to be righteous, is through tshuva, which is repentance, like it's a form of repentance. And because, and they say the entire Torah, if you were to say it in one sentence, what is it? It's v'ahavta le'acha kamocha, which means love thy neighbor as thyself.
Yes.
And ultimately,
the important part is as thyself.
As thyself. But,
which we usually gloss over.
But, yeah, because, right.
Because that's the essence of that, is
right.
Love thy neighbor as thyself, like you have to love yourself.
Right. Love yourself.
It's a profound act of self-love.
Right.
Well, it's interesting because if you
So-
awaken the self-love, then the way you're going to go outward will be from love.
Exactly.
But if your internal is empty, then you can't love another human
So
being.
I don't believe that we can have Messiah, Mashiach, or the clean awakening until the entire Jewish nation does repentance for ostracizing and peeing on and being ugly to and about Yeshua ben Yosef, because it's their brother, a fellow Jew. And in primitive times, if you were a bastard child, and all of they call it Lashon Hara, or evil speech that unfolded throughout the world about who this person is. And then one of the other highest sins is idol worship, where instead of idolizing the physical being, but understand that the essence of this soul is one of the highest connections to God or Hashem or the divine, is because of, like you said, the perpetrator and the victim, because he was both. And even the first fallen angel, which came into this world and represented by the snake, which is Satan, which is not evil, it's really our ability to have free will, because that angel is the most important angel of God. And yes, if every minute we have a choice on how to respond to whatever's happening in our life, but like you said, if you're caught up in the system of the past loyalties, then you can't possibly activate this Messiah consciousness. You just can't.
Yeah.
You have to do tshuva. You have to do, it's like, if you want to elevate your vibration, if you really want to see the world be a better place, then you have to, like, not be judging all of these people. And
because it tethers you to those dynamics.
Exactly. So it keeps us trapped in this repeating history. But that's why I wake up every day, personally, because I have this burning desire to assist in what's called Tikkun Olam, which includes raising the level of awareness, not only for, and I personally don't want to be the one to educate about Jesus or to educate about Yeshua ben Yosef or to be a Jew and educating Jewish or whatever. So basically what I realize in my position and how I can assist is that Holocaust education already exists. It's already mandatory in the state of Florida, and we can see where else it's mandatory. Holocaust education includes hate, racism, anti-Semitism, bullying, and murder, and all of the things that come along with that, and being like, not with love thy neighbor as thyself, obviously. So, which then unfolds. So we found Holocaust education that will collaborate with us. What do we do when we come to all of these key issues? We need to know that they exist because we have to honor our past, but not to continue it. So what we've done is we've taken the Holocaust,
but all the pieces of it.
All the pieces. So we have
all the pieces of it. What that really means is honor all the pieces of it. That's the hard part.
It's hard because it's so traumatic.
It's so traumatic, and honor all the pieces of it, and really the depth of what that means, because that's even including the perpetrators.
Well, Hitler was Jewish.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, his mother was Jewish, so he's Jewish.
Oh, wow.
So basically, and also at that time, if you learn a little, not you, but, if one learns a little bit about history, about what happened exactly when World War I and World War II happened.
Yeah.
So there was, at that time, a lot of crafts, and they were building a time machine. And the scientists that now work at NASA or have been working, including Einstein, building the atomic bomb and nuclear power and all of that, it all came from that time in Germany. So right after my grandpa died, it really changed my life. I didn't even wear, now I'm wearing black today, but I used to be very colorful, if you can remember. I couldn't even wear a color for like 4 or 5 years. Like, it was my whole world changed when my grandpa died. Like one grandpa died, my one that was in the Holocaust eventually committed suicide. He took his own life. He put a gun to his head
I remember that.
Yeah,
I remember
when
you telling me
things
that,
started
yeah.
getting bad with the Jews, and my grandma got dementia, so he took his life. Right after that, my grandma fell, and then she ended up dying 6 months later, my dad's mother, and then my stepmother died of cancer, and
Yeah.
then my dad's dad died, which is the grandpa that changed my life. Then my step sister's mother died. Our rabbi died. Like all these deaths, like really like close together. I just shut down, and I actually binged watched a series called The 4400 for like 5 days, like every episode, day and night. And what I learned was, it's a whole series on how over a period of 60 years, 4,400 people all disappeared at different points in time, and then they all arrived back at the same time. Exactly, they didn't lose any time but they came back into the current time, and each one came back with an ability. And one of the abilities that came with one of the people, 4,400, was this guy that had the ability that when he opened his mouth, he was actually, people followed him, and and it was created by this one activation in our brain. And if we think about that, we only use 6% of our brain, and the only thing that changed with all these people is they had this extra chemical. The only thing different with any of them was called promycin, which was a chemical and one part of their brain was activated that isn't normal in society, that would be considered an extra ability. So what I realized at that time, and putting it together, was when they were creating these things scientifically, this guy who was a Jew that all of a sudden had this new ability that when he opened his mouth, it was coming through him. And so if you see it as that, and then you also can see it as, obviously at that time, there was a big energy that needed to change our world, like this coronavirus, that where a mass amount of people need to die in order for a new paradigm as it unfolds. If we're blaming the Germans or we're fighting against it, we can actually make more of it, is what we're seeing today. It's perpetuating racism, anti-Semitism, and deaths over religion and whatnot. So again, how hard is it to love Hitler? But imagine that child that didn't want to be Jewish because of whatever happened with his mother and this and that, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah,
wasn't accepted, whatever the case may be, ultimately to have some type of extra experience through science or a craft coming into our world at that time, to be infused with this power over people.
Yeah.
Now, I know for sure 100%, because I'm going to tell you a quick story of what happened recently. So every time I decided I have a lot going on, so I would just voice dictate. So for like a month, every time I voice dictated, it would type Herb's tombstone unveiling. And then the second that I saw it, it would start deleting it from the back to the front. Then it would type what I actually said. And there was nothing that I said that was even close to Herb's tombstone unveiling. Now, Herb is Peter's dad. It was the name that they called him. So eventually Sophie was the one that brought it up. She goes, well, what happened on that day? Well, okay, yeah. So what happened on that day? Do you remember? So I looked in my Google Photos. I looked at my app. I couldn't find any pictures of that day. And I knew I took pictures because I knew I made a post on Facebook. So I looked in my Facebook. I found it. Peter and I were looking at the pictures, and his tombstone. See, before he passed away, they had already made all of their arrangements and this and that. You know how people prepare them for their death. So his tombstone only said his legal name in English and his birth and death date. That's it. But according to Judaism, in order, because they do certain prayers to honor the souls to come in during 4 times a year at certain high holidays, where there's a special prayer called the Yizkor that they invite the soul in order to make, the connection with our world now. And the child does it, like the son does this special prayer, son or daughter. So basically what happened was, when he died, we were in a financial crisis. or whatever, and we found out from the rabbi what needed to be put on his tombstone, but we didn't have the money to do it, and none of his brothers are Jewish. He's the only Jewish son of 6 of his father's sons, so to them it wasn't important to spend the money on that, so it didn't get done. So Peter asked Sophie what to do about that, and she told him what to do, write down exactly how it's supposed to be, go to his gravesite, put it there, whatever, and do that. So he did that right after Rosh Hashanah.
We need to go back a step, though. So I went to his grave, and I sat there and I asked him, I'm here, you wanted me to be here, what is it that you want from me, and what do you want to communicate? I'm listening. And I sat there probably for an hour. And I said, tell me, I'm listening, but give me the details and I'll do it. And then after that, when we came back, is when we realized what step wasn't taken.
Oh, okay. So, right. So what's that? Right.
It was this pondering, and I remember the quandary I was in, whether or not to do this, because it's like a link between the tomb and the soul that elevates up. There's a part of it that stays down. It's a link. And by not having that in place, the completion of the elevation wasn't happening.
Right.
Which is when you then were the
Right. So, actually, even to go back a few steps back, so when in Judaism, when a parent passes away, first they sit Shiva, then they do 30 days of the Kaddish, it's a prayer, and then or they do a year, 11 months, and then there's like this unfolding. So and then there's the tombstone unveiling, right? On the 1-year death anniversary of Peter's dad, he had to go away on a business trip, and that weekend that I was sleeping alone in our bed, because he was gone for like 3 or 4 days, I couldn't stop crying. And I kept feeling his dad. And I was in crisis because we love each other so much. Like, we're in it to the end. We communicate about everything. We know as much as we need to know about each other. We have healthy children. We have opportunity. We have so much. But we keep struggling with this money thing. And I said to him when he came back, I said, your dad was with me, and love is not enough. I can't continue like this. You need to figure out what's going on. And then there were a series of events that happened, and we could talk about that, but there was a series of events that happened. We spoke to the rabbi, and then we ended up getting our ketubah, which is our marriage license, checked. Turned out that it was completely wrong. We had the mezuzahs checked on our front door and our bedroom door. They both needed to be fixed. And then his tefillin, which is what he prayed with every day, needed to be repaired. And we did then eventually we did the tombstone. The minute that we made, and this happened even after he went to the grave, it was still coming through my voice dictation. Until we gave the money, which also came out of the settlement, until we gave the money to fix his tombstone. What?
When I went with the actual writing of what needed to be there, at that moment it stopped, and then we gave the money. But it was having the correct thing on the tomb.
He put it as a paper.
Right.
First.
And then we made payment.
And then
right
we made
after.
the payment,
Right.
and we told and then they worked on it. And just recently, the last couple of weeks was actually fixed.
Right.
So what I learned from that experience was, it doesn't matter what we say. I could be talking to you right now on this whole podcast, but the angels actually come through my voice as a vibration of whatever it is that you need to hear. So I have become a person that has that special ability that doesn't matter what I talk to you about. If you're supposed to receive a message, you're going to receive a message no matter what I'm saying. There's like this back data, or what you call the back end, or coding that's happening, that actually your angels want to tell you of messages that you need to hear.
It's enclosed within the words. It's the internal that you're receiving on an unconscious level.
And that's what in the constellation world, that's what a facilitator does. Is just lets the intuition of the field kind of bring up whatever information needs to happen. And the hardest part about being a facilitator is listening. It's like you just sit down, you don't make any assumptions, and then just let the information come up. Like what, we've created a field here, and you've said the financial things, and in your family history, finances equals death. Success equals death. There's a clear conflict there.
Yeah. And it's not only that, it goes even further because you don't know my history.
Yeah.
So my grandparents, my mother's parents, when they came together, they ended up having 2 kids. My grandfather severely abused his son, who's disabled and really a wreck his whole life. And my mother was like the golden child. And in my family, it was the opposite. My brother was the golden child and I was the abused. But the their success, he always, because of his experience with success, that became the demise of my family, where he thought that my dad was stealing from him or whatever because they got into a business venture and he created all this stuff, and that became the division of our family. So in my life, my association with money was always, money just brings pain and suffering, whether it's not having it, all of that. And with Peter, what I realized in our life together, like as a facilitator of constellations, I had told him for many, many years that his mother was always very independent. They always had money. He wasn't abused. He grew up, with money, with a mother and father. They stayed together his whole life. He was never from a divorced home, even though his brothers were, he wasn't. And but they had money, so his mom would go out and do her thing, and he would have babysitters, or he would be put into a nursery school or whatever, and nannies and other people taking care of him. And when he was maybe 3 months old, his parents went to Europe and left him. So I always felt that he was trapped by a loyalty or rebelliousness of his parents and his association with money, where he always kept me home to only ever have enough to just be home with my kids. And I don't see it as a curse. I always saw it as, this is something within you, because I have my things to fix in me, but this was something that became a recurring theme that would come up, that I knew that he needed to shift out of to be the best version of him. Because I look at him, and anybody that looks at him, everybody wants to work with my husband. He's a man of integrity. He's loyal. He's a good worker. He's savvy. He can multitask. He's got so much ability. For him not to succeed, there's got to be some financially. I mean, because he's succeeded in love and in health and in healthy children and beautiful family, even in his field of work for the last 14 years, and he has so many successes, but I didn't understand what.
If you want to run over, hold on. Peter's asking me for the bathroom code. We can break. It's no big deal.
But you understand? So
it's 2563.
Yeah, maybe I'll go with him.
Yeah, if you guys want to go to the bathroom, go. Yeah.
No.
We can break. I'll cut this out. So.
Okay.
You're struggling. Yeah. No, it's 2563.
All right, I'll be right back.
All right.
I had to go into the woman's bathroom. Man, there was a woman in the hall. I said, "Can you tell me what to do?"
Kind of the getting the information from the ancestors is you're connected, right? You're deeply connected into into that field, and that's how facilitation happens. It's the same process. You can have, if you're quiet enough, you get insight or intuition, and that you clearly have that. I mean, that's you're
what
clearly
I always
doing
say.
that. Yeah.
What I always say that I'm most grateful for, more than I would say the number one thing that I'm grateful for is my awareness.
Insight. Yeah.
My insight, right.
Yeah.
So
You've always been very insightful.
but
Yeah.
I've had it since I was a kid, and I even
As long as I've known you, I guess.
yeah, I've had it since I was a kid. I was very afraid of it. I was as a little kid, I would hide my hands under my pillow because there were witches that would come at night to try to take my hands because I was a healer. I would actually wake up with like slashes in my hands. I had it was very real for me, and it could have been a dream or could have just been my soul traveling, but there was a portal in my room that I would go out, and I would be very aware of that and come back. And I probably learned that it was more like astral projection. And that's very real because I've had an experience with someone that does astral project, and it was my ex-boyfriend. And at one night we were holding hands, and he was going to astral project, and all of a sudden I felt myself going out. He realized he was holding my hand, and he immediately came back, and then I dropped back into my body. So I was really afraid of that, and I really went far from it. But then when I found the Kabbalah Center and Judaism, I felt a lot more protected. I started my life evolving into having more, because when it's nothing is paranormal or this or that, we just don't see everything.
Yeah.
But and just like you, like when you first learn about family constellations or it's a cult or this or that, the thing is that one of the things that happens is people want proof.
Yeah.
So that's why I feel that all of the theories that were once theories, and science has the ability to back those theories. One of the best series I ever watched that I highly recommend watching, it's called Through the Wormhole with Morgan Freeman. And the other series I watched a lot of is Ancient Aliens, because it kind of gives a different perspective of a lot of the stories that we've learned in our history, and just gives you different angles and different associations, which assists in elevating consciousness, especially if you're learning the science behind the why, or the link between science and God, or trying to figure out this physical and metaphysical and whatever. It's actually all intertwined, because consciousness is collective, and it collects into water, and everything's made of water, and we're a planet of mostly water, so it's our highest energy conductor. And then when it comes to the interaction of the souls and our ancestors, like you're saying, going back 7 generations, our ancestors and what's playing out today, and how we're going to respond to all of these things.
Yeah. That's one of the things that the two things have kind of come up to a lot for me lately. And one of them is that, so this theory of morphic resonance talks about when things happen in nature, once they happen, the second time it happens is easier, right? It's like this theory, right? So they say that once they crystallize a new component, the second time it has a crystallization is easier. And so if you take that and you kind of blow it up to its maximum potential, our type of life forms in the universe should be relatively common, right? So if you say we're kind of the same thing, and there's a consciousness, right, in all things, physical and non-physical, and living and non-living, then what we're here doing is pretty common, just like mice and birds and fish and all types of species of fish. And this should happen in my kind of loosely created theory, is that what we're doing now should happen throughout the universe billions of times over, and in many different locations, right? I mean, that's kind of what this is talking about. And so we're not that special. everybody was like, oh, the 1,000 years ago, people thought that everything revolved around, the earth, and it's like, no, it's like we're just part of this. We're just another iteration of this thing. Yeah. And there was Graham Hancock they did this study, and going back to what you were saying, is they figured out what they think is that a lot of religious beliefs come from the heavy use of psychedelics in ancient times.
Yeah.
And if you've ever done a DMT or ayahuasca trip,
no
experience, I would highly recommend it to anybody. I've never been a big, explorer of that type of the world. I was in the military for a long time, and I kind of grew up pretty straight-laced. But I recently had an experience, and it was life-changing. It's an incredible experience, and that's really tells you.
So if you'll cut this part out, Peter and I, when we first met.
I can't cut it out.
No.
That's part of it.
No.
Then don't
say
it.
We have kids. All right, fine. It's fine. All right, so.
Your kids aren't going to listen to the podcast.
So.
They'll eventually find out.
We weren't even really dating.
Yeah.
And we had,
mushrooms.
When I was younger, I had like a boyfriend. We were together for like 7 or 8 years, so it was a big chunk of my life. And I always tell Peter that a lot of our experiences he prepared me for, so I always honor that relationship. And one of the things that I had done before was mushrooms once or twice. And so he's like, oh, because we were learning each other. So he's like, oh, he would want to try that. And just so happens, one of my family members says that her friend had them.
Okay.
So we invited him over for dinner. And then after dinner, so it's like, look what I got. He's like, if you have it, whatever. So he's like, oh, yeah, let's do it. I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, do you have like 12 hours to hang? He's like, well, I have to work tomorrow.
Clear your schedule for the next day.
Yeah. So he's like, oh yeah, let's do it. So he takes the bag and freaking dumps almost literally 98% of the bag in his mouth.
Oh wow.
I'm like, what about me? Like, you can't do this alone. There's no way you could trip alone. There's no way. Like, I knew that. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we ate mushrooms together. So he definitely opened his
it's
eyes
an incredible experience.
Yeah.
I mean, the work that they're doing now with traumatic brain injury, curing depression, is
psychedelic therapy. My brother's doing it.
100%. And that ayahuasca experience was exactly that. Like, I had such a cathartic moment in the experience. I was sobbing at one point.
It opens, it removes a filter.
Yeah, I don't know what it does, but it connects you to something else.
Yeah.
Whatever, but it's a reconnection, and this is what I was talking to somebody, and I was like, it wasn't necessarily like I was finding out something new. I was reconnecting with the same consciousness.
What I mean is, there's a filter.
Yeah.
There's a filter that is removed.
Yeah.
And you are accessing into a very significant pipeline.
Yeah, it felt like I was connecting to the non-physical consciousness, like the source of all consciousness, and that's really what it boils down to. Yeah. That was such an incredible experience, and I like the family constellations. You kind of see it live. You're like, okay, this is you're like, this is the morphic field, right? Like, this is what we call it here, and then it's like there's all things, and we're all connected, and you do the thing. And then when you do the ayahuasca, you're like, this is like the, at the theater, it's kind of like theater. Like at the theater, You're like, oh, you see the play, and then you look behind the curtain, and you're like, this whole ensemble of people running around doing stuff. That's what you see in the ayahuasca. Yeah. It was such a powerful kind of connection through this tunnel and moving into this this consciousness, and you were like, oh, this is the back end of the computer. Like this is
it's the coding.
Like where that place comes from. It was incredible. I had an incredible experience. Yeah, I would recommend it to anybody to do it. There's a shaman, and there's some people that can.
Send us the
Yeah, I'll send you the info. It's an incredible experience. It
We'll
really
have a
is.
follow up.
The truth of the matter for me is before I was always I grew up because I'm not gonna say beaten to submission, but beat into just getting the fuck out there and just not caring about anything and not having any fear. Just go. I went
Yeah.
around the world by myself. I had so many experiences, and I did it alone, and I didn't fear a lot of things like trying new things or new
You're
experiences.
extremely
but
independent.
Extremely independent.
Yeah.
So is Peter, by the way. We're both extremely independent, but now we're completely intertwined, which is one of the craziest things ever, because we're both probably the two of the most independent people you'll ever want to meet, but yet
Yeah.
we could be together 24 hours a day for 18 years and not
Yeah.
get sick of each other.
Yeah.
But but once I had kids, I changed.
Yeah.
I really changed.
You
I'm a
shift.
mom.
You
I
shift.
shifted.
Yeah.
I used to go in the ocean all the time. Now I have so many more fears. I have more fears about so many things.
Well, you're more vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right.
100%,
And I
yeah.
have responsibility to this family. So it's really, and the truth is, like, yeah, I know that it's really good to get altered sometimes, to just take yourself out of yourself. I don't like to drink because I get very sick.
But you're
I
not
don't-
doing it to escape. You're doing it to come to a higher perspective.
Yeah,
which
that's-
is very
I
different.
had
Right.
a similar.
Right.
I had a similar concern. I'm a father of 2 small children, and can you lose yourself in this place? And
Yeah.
just kept doing research and more research about it, and I'm like, this seems idiot proof kind of in a place. You do have to set your intentions. Like, you really have to follow the diet, and you can't be on SSRIs, and there's all like these things that you have to follow. And I did my I have a series of meditations, and I was doing my meditation on a regular basis. And I think the constellations kind of prepared me for this next phase in my evolution. And it was very much that. It was my next phase in the evolution. It was connecting to the higher self, and then my fear was like my kids and like all that stuff. And I was like, once I started doing the research, I'm like, it's not like I'm gonna go on a hard drug bender and do this thing. This is like a very experiential thing, and you go with a person that does it, and you go through a process and a thing.
I think I haven't done it, but I think you access and unearth, you tap into something so powerful,
Yeah.
the essence of it all, and then you bring that back, and your life is
Yeah.
not only different but better. And the
Yeah.
abilities that are awakened,
Yeah.
I see it 100%.
Yeah. It's like that.
Right.
It's like going
So-
to like a sweat lodge or something. It's like an experience. It's like it's more
Right.
like you have to go through the shamanic
'Cause
experience
we
as well.
live in a realm where, we live in a realm, the reason most people have difficulty is they don't see a presence of God, they
Yeah.
don't see they don't see anything.
Connected to the source of all
And
things.
when you have
They
the
lose
ability to tap into that,
Yeah.
you would only do the right thing
Yeah.
if there was some evidence or connection or something. It's the absence of it
Yeah.
is why they stray down a path that's not for their highest good.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
is evil, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the average person. They don't see it. It's like,
I don't like I've been struggling with that concept as well. I don't think there's evil. I really
Well, that's
don't
what I
think
was
there's
saying
evil.
earlier when I was saying.
I think
talking-
there's just
right.
things, and
No, there's.
people reach their maximum potential, and that maximum potential can be the destruction of other people.
I don't know about that. I'm going to tell you why. Because
You
it
know?
goes back. No, it goes back to the conversation I was having about Yeshua ben Yosef, aka Jesus Christ, but aka Messiah. So, I feel that it's because of before our world was right in the beginning of our world that was created when the original sin, when we had the choice of living in with the tree of life or the tree of knowledge, good and evil. Now, with that being said, understanding family constellations therapy and how we have the loyalties to our ancestors, no matter what, it all goes back to the original choice. not going to say sin because it was a choice. The original choice
Or
of
without.
either connecting to the tree of life or the tree of knowledge, good and evil. Now, the tree of knowledge, good and evil means that the evil is associated with Satan. That's why they call it Satan, but associated with hell or the dark side. And then the tree of life connects with the force of all good. The force of all good is everything. It's everything. Like you said, there is no evil. But because of the loyalties from the original choice and the choices made all along the way from everyone that is living in a physical reality, no matter where they are in the universe, it is unfolding in situations that are horrible, dark situations. So it isn't that there is an external evil, but if there is a collective consciousness that is perpetuating acts of killing and greed and adultery and coveting and stealing and idol worshiping, even if it's not evil, it feeds the force of the essence of the original choice of choosing the tree of knowledge, good and evil. If you choose the tree of life, which ultimately supports all of the kingdoms that were created in a sequential order, being us being the last. There was an album out in maybe the 60s or the 70s. It was called If a Frog Had a Brain, You Would Think He's the Center of the Universe. Because we're made in the image of God, and when the first angel fell in because the other angels judged him, that became Satan, which became called the free will. So there is no external necessarily evil. There has become a life of its own because the original choice after we already knew what not to do.
Yeah.
So every time we choose the thing that we know that we're not supposed to do as a race, it feeds that. Even though it's only 1%, but the 1% is physical because it's what we see in this world. What we don't see is the 99% of the reality of consciousness all over the universe, but it becomes quantified and it becomes real because there's energy put into it that goes in our water, which then evaporates into the clouds, which then comes back down into our world, which then gives us our experiences depending on how we vibrate. And if we're constantly vibrating in the with the old story, then the burden is very heavy to bear, and people are fed up with these burdens like racism and hate and murder. And why? And the only reason why is because we keep responding to it with judgment.
Yeah, exactly. Because this is what, and you were saying a point that was really interesting about righteousness. It's like what happens with righteousness is that I have to be able to be right. And for me to be right,
you have to be wrong.
You have to be wrong, exactly. And so if I'm in the position of the victim, if I'm truly in the position of a victim, and I'm like, I'm a victim because all these things, you'll find a perpetrator anywhere.
To fulfill
the dynamic.
Yeah, but you attract it. That's
exactly.
what I'm saying about the water.
But you'll find it. Yeah, you'll find the perpetrator.
That's what the Matrix is.
Yeah, you'll find the perpetrator in that dynamic. And so when you say when somebody says or we go through this process, we have to be careful what we want to be right about.
Yeah.
Do we want to be right about men being victims of women that divorce them? Right? Let's say that. Like, men are treated horribly in the judicial system, and do I want to be right about that? No. I'm choosing to have a different perspective, right? Like, I'm choosing to have I need to assume my responsibility for the co-creation of that dynamic. That's where it really comes down to, because if not, I'm right. And there's a true energy to that. Is because I would say, I always go to this example, but if you are, if you're if you want to be right about something, and that dynamic doesn't happen, you end up being wrong. And it ends up being unresolved. And you want that to conclude because you have this scaffolding of idea of what something's going to look like. And if it doesn't end up being that way, you're like, I'm wrong. I'm crazy. I'm loyal to something that's not necessarily always happening. So when you release that ability to be in one side of the dynamic or the other, you can release from it. You can be free of it.
That's why we're married.
Yeah.
Because he had an idea of what his wife was supposed to look like, and even though he loved who I was as a person, he couldn't see me as his wife. What do you have to say about that?
Oh man, we just entered dangerous waters.
Tell him.
I observed you.
Just.
Well, you want to tell a story?
Yeah, because it's really important. Because you need to help assist men to
I'm going to answer
help
you.
that.
I think that every man has a blueprint in their brain of something that they're unconscious of. And I think it's in everything, but specifically in relationship. They have an idea of what they think it's going to be like, what they're going to look like, how it's going to be, and they have a vision. And they're guided to manifest that vision unconsciously. So they could meet a person in front of them, and it doesn't fit the mold, it's not for me. And I think my first marriage was the unfolding of that vision. And then 3 years later, we were divorced. And then took a lot of time to grow spiritually and read and tap in and really self-reflect, decide what's important, what I want, what I don't want. And the one prevailing theme was that where I need to go and where I'm going, this partner could never take me. And what I realized that was the most important was somebody that would feed me on a spiritual and on a deep level, because everything surface didn't work.
Yeah.
It's not wired like that. And as I began to date and live and so on, I began to see how important it was. And then I began to do various activities, and ultimately was in the Kabbalah Center, and I met Leah, who was soon to be my wife, and saw her, and there was something familiar, but didn't think anything more than that. And to make a long story short, after a period of time of getting to know her, and she was nice and very insightful, we were sitting in the Trump Plaza or Trump building that was recently built by the UN, and we were connecting after an entire evening, and as I sat and looked at her, it was like a chest opened up, like you see in the movies. And all these like fairies and stars and energy came out of it, and had the aha moment. But that is the type of woman that I would want to marry. That's exactly the type of woman.
Not me.
No. Hang on. That it was that type, and I looked at her, and I was kind of mesmerized on some level. And then the night ended and went about, and we continued to connect, and after a series of time and holding on and keeping my ideas of what I think, and I wasn't really resisting her, I just didn't see it.
He didn't see me.
I didn't see her as the one that is going to be all of these things. It wasn't there for me. And she came around, and she would drive from Plantation
to Boynton Beach.
To Boca Raton. I came out of a
Boynton
mortgage
Beach.
company. No. Coming out of a mortgage company, completely drained, like sucked by a vampire. She'd take me to the beach and brought this entire meal with chicken and this and that, and then would come visit me in Boynton Beach. You're talking like an hour travel time. And this went on, and one day she says to me, listen, you need to leave. I was living with my parents because I came back from New York. She says, you need to leave right now. Okay, where am I supposed to go? I was open. She said, you need to come live with my mom and my stepfather. I said, what? I don't know who they are, don't know nothing. She said, we need to pack up your car, and if you need to leave right now, or you'll never get it, and they'll never change. I said, okay.
I said, because his parents, although wonderful people, and I honor them, and I can't be more grateful for, their love and sacrifice so that Peter's here in this world today as my partner through life with our beautiful, healthy children and on our amazing mission with so much purpose. I knew that they didn't know who he was, and they were not looking at him with the type of eyes that he needed and support to be the best version of who he is in his life and his destiny, because in their generation, and I don't fault them, it's what they're conditioned. It's that you can't be too thin or too rich, and as long as he didn't have the things in their mind that he should have, they were looking at him as a disappointment.
They had an idea that you have to do X, Y, and Z to be successful, to be this. That's their judgment in their way, which I reminded my mother of, trying to teach her something, probably not supposed to teach, but
No.
bringing it full circle. There's a point at which I just let go. And if this is really what is for the highest, and this is really going to be the highest union and allow me, because again, it was about me, to really become the maximum of who I need to be, I surrender. And then I saw it, and then we came together. But really the most interesting part that I want to share with you is that people generally meet, myself included, you have instant chemistry, and then it's amazing. And then if you poll 50 people, I would say 49 out of 50 will tell you that from the time they got married to the present time, if they're still together, that basically it fizzled out. It's not the same. The chemistry isn't as strong. It's the general trend. There are exceptions to the rule. What happened with us that's profound is literally like a wine that as it went along, it built.
Yeah.
And the level of love I feel for her today is 1,000 times greater than when we met or were married.
Yeah.
And it continues
because
we created something. There was no longer a map. We created it and built something, and I let go the image of what I thought it was supposed to be. And only in that moment am I able to presently appreciate the here and now. I'm not saying there aren't challenges and we don't go through, but the level of love and fulfillment and bliss.
And unity.
Yeah.
Like
unity and partnership. But she saw it
so
18 years ago.
Okay, so I took an active role in his transformation of turning that, being the neck to turn that head.
Let me touch on a point that you hit that's really, really important, I think. I'm pretty sure, but I have this sneaking suspicion that immediate attraction that you feel to somebody else is you're seeing past them. You're like, I can work on the things that I have, my baggage with this person. Does that make sense? Like that connection, that's like that visceral connection. I think that's where it comes from.
I'll say it in a different language. I think in other words, that person fulfills my every need at this moment.
Yeah.
Because of all of the baggage I have and all of the baggage they have, we fill each other. The problem is that once you shed the baggage, if you have anything anchored, the relationship fizzles.
Right.
Like it happened with Miranda and I. Like I wasn't ready to meet Miranda until I did my first constellation. Like our relationship was like, oh, I found the person. And it's like, we've been together for 11 years. And I'm like we've never had like any, major blowouts or, we've just like, I was like, oh, okay, boop. And we connected and it's like a perfect fit. And we just like kind of built our whole life based on this very natural connection. And it wasn't this, passion, those things come loaded with the past. They come loaded with, they're like these opportunities to kind of let the baggage out, and you kind of capitalize on that. And a lot of people build their marriage on that, and then they don't let the baggage out, and then nothing continues afterwards, and then things, you can only have that for so long. and that's I think that's beautiful.
There has to be a very deep anchor.
Yeah,
Meaning
exactly.
that once the baggage is left,
Yeah.
you're anchored to continue to move forward.
Exactly.
Yeah, so what happened with us is that when we first came together, I was in a marriage, okay? There's a lot of, when we talk about loyalties. So in my first marriage, because we were both married before for 3 years each, before we came together, in my first marriage, my ex-husband, he had another Hebrew name, but his name was Carmi, which is like my karma. His birthday ended up being the same birthday as our first son, Jacob. Same Hebrew parsha, same Hebrew date, like the whole thing. And our daughter as his sister. But I couldn't have kids with him. And even though we did our astrology, and I had 2 world-renowned astrologers tell me that I should really reconsider leaving this guy because they never saw maps lined up in the way. But I knew that with that man, absolutely under no circumstance could I ever do what I need to do in this world. And I eventually had to go. I couldn't do anything, period. I mean, I would have been trapped. And so what happened was, and then I was also in another relationship for 8 years before that, and I had even another relationship that was very significant. What I realized was, because I saw that it was us way before he saw it was us, like 8 months before. And at that time, I watched this show called What the Bleep Do We Know? It's all about quantum physics. So I was singing and dancing and really knowing that I had to release in every fat cell all the self-abuse, all the past abuse from relationships, and all of the pain and all of this stuff that I was holding because he couldn't see me. Because he was a guy that wanted his wife. And he had hit in his way that he saw that his wife is supposed to be. And he was praying 3 times a day and eating kosher and doing so much spiritual work that I needed to be a clean enough vessel for him to recognize me, because I would look at him and I'd be like, why can't he see me? I literally would look in the mirror like he loves me. I literally felt like this guy really loves me, and he's going to wake up every day being in love with everything that I do. And guess what? It's like that today, but back then he couldn't even see that I would be a potential person to date.
But I wasn't looking to date. My intention, which was lucid to the universe, was I wanted my wife. I wanted her to be on a higher elevation because that would allow me to grow. And that was the most important above everything. And then that would be the thing that would populate everything else. That was it.
Did you get her?
Yeah.
And boy, he was a hottie. The rabbi, when I went to the rabbi, he's like, oh my God, another one. All the girls would be saying, oh, that's my soulmate, that's my soulmate, that's my soulmate.
That's funny.
But yeah, so things are really good because I think, I really, really believe it's because we do this work and we take an active participation in.
I mean, it really, like, we've known you guys for, almost 10 years now. And you guys have always been very connected in this journey. And I think that's the key to a happy marriage, is to do that. Is, the work that you guys have done with Sophie, the work that you guys continue to do is, the thing that wrecks most every scenario is past bullshit. It's like wanting to recreate that next, wanting to be right.
Yeah, but
we're
not there.
At a super profound level. That's what, and as long as you're working on clearing that stuff, you're in good shape.
So what we've come to as a couple, in that we chose to focus all of our time on, and creating the foundation that we created with the Enlight Unite Foundation, and also the way to sustain and prosper through a business as well, not only just raise money for worthy causes, but to also gain prosperity as a couple in our life, for our family. So back to the story of me trying to figure out who I am and what my purpose is and what my mission is. And then a I'm a visionary. With Peter, what I learned is that, really that quote, perceived failure is success in disguise. And we actually had an intuitive counselor that once said that whatever we're doing is going to be like an internship, and then you become a master. Then you work it, then you can master something. And how it's evolved is that I ended up with going around the world and bringing alive my relationships that are doing great things. So currently, what we've done is bring the largest peace campaign worldwide with activities in 200 countries, collaborating with the largest school-to-career program and dropout prevention program and job readiness skilled program in the country. Running the peace program is 26 years, mentoring students on the key issues by the Nobels. The Jobs for America's graduates with its 35 state affiliates all over in educational programs all over the country that collaborating with the peace campaign. Number one, because they do service in their program, and number two, because they each have components that they can service each other's program to enhance. The peace program wants to bring their students from school to career because they want to make sure that they can follow their passion and make it a career, and also have their give back in communities and relationships on the issues that they're concerned about. And the JAG program is actually this year focusing on love. So now we have peace. The JAG, all of JAG it has what's this year called the Love Project. So we have love, and then the 10th year anniversary of Dance for Kindness, which is a kindness campaign that's in 50 countries, running for 10 years, where every year in November, they kick off Kindness Week with a flash mob and a freeze mob. So, and there are other programs that's interested in collaborating, like Spirituality for Kids and like the Nativity Church, and just different programs. So we I told you that I met God Elbaz. So God is a part of this, and he's got his series, God Bless America. He's GAD, so we always have to, in our circle, we always have to say whether we're talking about God Elbaz or Hashem. So Hashem, God. So God co-wrote a song with Latin artist Rudy Perez. You know Rudy Perez. So, and then they sings a Spanish-English version with Lanier.
Okay.
They're Cuban recording artists and very big in the Latin music. So it's a song called "It's All About Love."
Oh,
and
nice.
The main chorus verse is called "It's All About Love. It's all about trust. It's not about me. It's all about us."
Oh, wow.
So we're going to be doing a special edition flash mob around the world. And then we have another song called We Are One, which it goes back to We Are All One.
And is on Spotify?
Not yet.
Not yet?
We Are One is on Spotify, but It's All About Love, we're actually in the process of creating the release. So we're raising the funds to do the music video, which we're planning on shooting on February 14th, because we want to activate it. We want to activate it on... just keep it right now. We want to activate it on Valentine's Day, because it's the nationwide recognition of love. Plus, it gives us time to rebrand, because God is really an Israeli Jewish singer.
Yeah.
And the point of doing this together is to bridge into mainstream, and we're planning on using music. So we're working with more than one person. So besides the largest organizations of peace, love, unit, and kindness, we also are working with a lot of people in the music industry. So Antonia Bennett, Tony Bennett's daughter, she's the director of our foundation. She's in Berkeley College learning, music therapy. Music is for healing. We're using music that will be inspiring. That's, because there's a lot of music that's very geared towards, doubt, concern, trauma, violence, sex.
You don't like the ayahuasca ceremonies? They're filled with music that's about healing. It's incredible.
Yeah. So this is really we're kind of doing this where we're bringing God mainstream to launch in the first. It's called the Unity album.
Okay.
So we're going to be doing activities throughout the year to highlight the awareness days through music and activities with giving students and people around the world the opportunity to either sing for kindness, dance for kindness, log an act of peace, an act of love, to have spoken word, and give them that opportunity as an activity. But the Enlight Unite Foundation then is the executive producer of capturing all of the activities around the world while they're doing them. For example, Peace Jam, they want to do what's called 1 year of service. So we can launch a contest where all of the submissions go in, and then they can, or what they'll want to do is you find a place that needs work on a key issue, and you find students around the world to come to that place. So it becomes kind of like a set where we can capture on film the activities that they're doing in order to participate in helping on that key issue.
Yeah.
And
if somebody wanted to get involved or support, how do they?
EnlightUnite.org.
So it'd be Unite.
Enlight Unite.
EnlightUnite.org.
Right.
Okay.
www.enlightUnite.org.
.org. Okay.
Yeah.
And is there an email, an Instagram, or?
So currently, we have all of the social media. We're actually building all of that right now, because of coronavirus, we've had to take a lot of pivots, and recently, while we were starting to activate the development of our app, in order to deliver the creative curriculum and to have the activities participation within the app, that part of it, I had then reconnected with all of the participating partners to kind of figure out where they're at right now and how they could participate in the current climate, because they did at one time last year and all the years prior do their education in a certain way, and now it's mostly virtual. So we had to find out from everyone where they're at, how they could participate, and then because we didn't have the app ready in order to do this, what we're going to do the activities on, it's Day Without Hate. So
Day Without Hate?
Yeah, so one of the Peace Jam alumni created a worldwide initiative called Day Without Hate, and Day Without Hate is usually at the end of April. This year it's on April 24th, but just like Kindness Week, they're going to have activities from April 20th to April 24th. So our idea is to highlight people around the world that are already participating in Day Without Hate, but including an opportunity of our contest in either to sing or dance or whatever.
Oh, that's cool.
And make submissions for me, like I really truly believe in the law of attraction. It's one of the laws that always works every time. And if you focus on hate, you're actually going to bring more hate because you're busy focusing on that. And from the deepest part of my heart and soul and everything that I've learned and doing systemic healing and family constellations therapy and going through everything that I've been going through, I've come to a place where, yes, it all exists, and yes, I could be made aware of all of those things, and yes, the education of it is important, but the only thing that I could focus on is how to get people on the Day Without Hate to inspire peace, kindness, love, and unity. So the idea that I see in the fastest way to get through to a message out to the world is through music.
Yeah.
And also activities and programming or film. So the evolution of the Enlight Unite Foundation I've always had it where I was, activating myself as an ambassador for the 1 billion acts of peace by doing a celebrity buzz and a charity buzz. What it is evolved into is that every celebrity that I've engaged along the way, or every influencer that I've engaged along the way that have agreed in this partnership that we have to work together to create a greater impact, to inspire kindness, peace, love, and unity. They also have their own story, which can be a documentary, and they also have their own activities that they're doing, whether it's music advocacy films or music healing or song creation, or bringing young people that want to sing and dance and helping mentor them, or even, for example, Josiah Daniel Graham, he's in Bachelor Nation. He was on The Bachelorette on Rachel's season. He also was on Bachelor in Paradise, and he did Bachelor Winter Games, but he's also works with one of my friends that I grew up with since I was 2, Johnny Eustall, attorney Kelly Eustall. He dedicates his life to justice for all by getting people justice when they had horrible accidents or deaths. But his brother committed suicide due to bullying. And he's a top attorney and on the bar and whatever he's got going on. He also mentors or comes in and speaks in Peter's program, Jobs for Florida's graduates, in the schools as a mentor to students, to take them from the ones that are interested in law to give his experience. So as a mentor, so he's an amazing person on the mission with us.
Oh, that's great.
So now we want to show how Josiah mentors the students, whether it be career or shows his give back on passion for anti-bullying and suicide awareness. And then he has the ability as an influencer to bring it into his network to get a greater audience. Then we have Paul Fisher. Paul Fisher was, and what's really interesting, and this is how I kind of figured out the evolution of the Enlight Unite Foundation, is all of a sudden, like, here Peter and I are busting like years working on this project. We have to figure out how we have to raise our own money, and like we're all doing all these things, and then all of a sudden there's this guy, Ciro DiPaggio. So we met him last year. We were at the premiere of his Mob King film and whatever, and he's a felon. He went to prison for almost 20 years for racketeering. He was in the mob. He worked for the mob, whatever. So Ciro, I texted him for something, and he texted me back that he wanted to get this one actor, and I was going to help him get the funding for that through some of our relationships. And I started focusing on Ciro. And then all of a sudden I called Paul to talk about getting his influencers to help us. And then he started talking about him and his story about he worked for the mob and when he was young. And that's how he ended up in his 30-year career in the #1 model agent in the world. But the first 5 years, he opened up the first modeling agency for the mob. So he has his film that he has to do, and then all of a sudden, I'm raising money for films, and I'm like, shit, I need to raise money for my film, and our film as a foundation that we had been planning. So it turns out that everybody, like, we're all cool with the fact that the Enlight Unite Foundation is going to raise the money to make sure that we can capture everybody doing what they're doing. But if you look at the world that we're living in today, and we just watched this one movie about another strain of coronavirus that's like 20 years down the road, but one of the most important things right now is content.
Yeah.
Is creating content, creating music, creating activities, creating communities of like-minded people so that we don't have cyberbullying. One of the Brandy, so I want to tell you about Brandy. She's the Billion Acts of Peace president, but she's also Roseanne Barr's first daughter that was given up for adoption because Roseanne had her when she was 15 or 16. And I mean, if you look at her family right now, Roseanne my God, what happened to Roseanne with the show? And I don't want to elaborate on all that, but that family is really suffering. And then Brandy, being the president of the 1 Billion Acts of Peace campaign and working with students for 26 years in Peace Jam Foundation, their students are using their voice. Like, you look at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, because they're working with those students and from Sandy Hook and from Columbine, and all the gun violence. And these kids, all they want to do is use their voice, and they are being bullied and attacked by other people. These
Yeah,
poor
of
little
course.
kids.
I mean, that's kind of the dynamic. Isn't
I
it?
understand. It's the dynamic of today, but
No,
but,
no, not that.
What?
I mean is that, like, if you are, like, there's the completion of this dynamic there. Like, like, it's where we have to run towards runs towards the perpetrator and find out and reconcile with that energy. That's where this I think that we have it all wrong. It's like, Peter, what you were saying before is like, how do you love Hitler? It's like you love him as a child.
right.
He was a little kid at some point, and something happened. You know, that movie that you were saying, The Shack, is you look at the dynamics of it, and you can find a place where you can connect with that person. And that's the same thing with these mass shootings and everything. There was those kids, those perpetrators, at some point were children, and you know, we have to look at that softly. And if we continue to, like, what I'm always afraid of is giving power to, you know, racism or systemic or bullying or whatever that is, because we need to understand the dynamic so we can heal it
But that's what's happening. So what they're doing on the inside, even when they have their conferences with the students, it's private. So this is the trick, is right now, because of social media and all the divisiveness, and it's either black or white, and people are, I mean, it's horrible. I don't even want to go there of what's happening to me as a person that's only trying to do good in this world, that I get judged for.
Yeah.
But the thing is we want to help protect those students by giving them a closed, secure space that's FERPA and COPA compliant, that we could have communities of not only like-minded, but then have the ones that are have a different viewpoint, and then teach them how to communicate, and also teach them how to gracefully clean up the past, while gratefully and peacefully unfold a brighter future by getting into careers, not by looting and fighting and marching and all that. Yes, you can have a voice, but we need to help focus that and to protect them so that they can evolve.
But protecting them creates a dynamic of
But you have to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can't get into the districts. You have to protect their identity.
Pilot something with a group of kids?
I can't.
Is there a way to pilot this type of... I'm just thinking if there was a way to take a small segment of kids and somehow, I don't know if the right word is educate, but expose them, or
To this type of work,
the concepts
it would
of
have to be the parents. So you can't. So in systemic work, I can't do a constellation for a child that's not mine. Does that make sense?
If they're 18, does it matter?
If they have to be emancipated. It doesn't. The age doesn't necessarily matter. What matters is emancipation or not. If they're emancipated, they can do it for themselves. But I couldn't. Like, I could come in and, you know, have conversations with them, but I couldn't do systemic work for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
He can't be a facilitator, but he can definitely be like give an idea of like a lecture.
if the parents were to, if we were to do a constellation with the parents, like, you could do a constellation with the parents, and like parents do it, and that those repercussions go naturally to the kids.
But if there was something more just
like the reverberations, not the repercussions.
The perception. In other words, instead of viewing the world that there's right and wrong, good and bad, but to train them to be more objective.
Yeah.
That's where I'm going.
Yeah, I mean, I would. It's a first step and a really important step, I think, is to understand. It's to understand what giving power to is important, because that's what this, and that's I really want to tread lightly on this, because there's personal entanglements and there's a lot of stuff that comes in with this. Is like, if I'm advocating for, let's say I'm advocating for victims, like, I'm taking away their power and not consenting to their destiny. Does that make sense? Like, I have to be super respectful of their process, because if not, I'm creating the judgment and further victimizing them. Because that's between them and They're creative, whether their source, and that's, and I'm not honoring their destiny, and I'm giving more power to the victimization of them, and so cementing more into the it has.
And watch, if you look at social media today,
Yeah.
and what's going on, that's exactly what's going on.
And we create these micro judgments, and that's what ultimately happens, as in social media, is that we've amplified the micro judgments. It's like dislike, dislike. This is like a micro judgment and solidifies us in the dynamics, and so it tethers us to that. And then so that's where you see these people being bullied, or they're excluded. So that's when these kids commit these atrocities, there's usually kids that have been excluded.
Yeah.
They've been excluded from their families. They've been excluded
Or abused.
and so or abused, or you want to include them, and that's why in those meditations it's like bring in all the excluded ones, because the excluded ones are the ones that gain the most amount of power, and the excluded ones are the ones that are willing to throw the table up, kick the table and say fuck this game. I'm gonna go into a school and commit this atrocity. Like
Right.
But
that's one of the things. That's why they
we need
say
to understand
hugging,
it.
But hugging, yeah,
that's
yeah.
what we really need to do, is really understand it, and not make monsters out of these scenarios. We can't. That's us. There's no separation.
Yeah, that's where I struggle, because
it makes me want to weep, that we do this to ourselves, because if we really truly believe that we come from one place, we are both the victim and the perpetrator. We are both. That's where our consciousness comes from. We are both the mass murderer and the murdered. We are both. We are in every aspect, and only through understanding is where we'll be able to heal.
No.
Only when we can sit down, and those victims can truly love the perpetrator, is where you can come into healing, and that's really difficult to do.
So if you learn the science behind it, which was, I think, one of the last, if not the last episode of the entire series of Through the Wormhole, it is scientifically proven that once a mass shooting or a violent crime or a gun violent crime is on the news, it will happen again in 13 days. Why? Because the same person that wasn't hugged, because when you hug someone, you're heart to heart, you have to hug for 20 seconds, and then the oxytocin in the brain then gets activated, which is a necessary part of brain development, and you need that chemical in your brain to have a healthy brain. It also connects you heart to heart with another human, and you become less likely to be violent against another human or judge another human.
Or to quit the game. That's what that ultimately is somebody quitting the game.
Right, but it's
just the same as suicide. It's a form of social suicide.
Yeah, but it's proven, scientifically proven, that if someone has that ability already in their mind, which comes back to whether it be a loyalty or trauma-related incident, that it will activate in their brain, and then they will be that person to play out that act.
I think the fallacy is that we all have the capability of doing that.
Exactly.
That we think that we all don't have the capability to do that.
Yeah.
Like we all have the capability to do extreme destruction and extreme construction, right? Like we
see it
infinitely potential to do both of those things. And when we take the position of like, how could somebody do that, and judge them for that, is when we create the dynamic to further perpetuate that dynamic from happening again.
That's why my main focus has been consistently to only highlight, to mostly accentuate love, peace, unity, kindness, to keep on helping that. And also with Peter, with his program, then taking those same young children that really just need to learn like how to be a productive member of society. And because in our system you actually have to work in order to make money, what is it that you really would love to do? What is it that you're passionate about? How do you make a career out of that? Well, now let's find a mentor or a CEO of a company or whatever and match them together with a mentor. Or if they're passionate about a key issue, match them with a Nobel, and then help them and then help them learn how to make positive content out into the world that's going to inspire the alternative of the act. That's why they're going to be focusing on Day Without Hate. All I want to do is show kindness, peace, love, and unity on that day. I don't want to accentuate hate, but that is the key issue that we're looking to gracefully clean up while we gratefully unfold a brighter future.
Yeah, the thing that usually comes up in this is acknowledging what is. That's the first
acknowledging,
step.
so you acknowledge that
Acknowledge
there's a day
what
without
is.
hate.
No, it's like just acknowledging that there is hate.
Yeah.
And that
Okay.
we assume the responsibility for creating creating hate as well. Because that's what is. You can't. That's step number one. Because if not, it's a judgment.
Because we hate those that hate us.
Exactly. It's a judgment. It's ultimately a judgment.
Yeah.
It's like, push away that rather than bringing it in and saying, like, we're excluding the hate. And it's like, no. Hate is part of what we are. We need to assume responsibility for that. Acknowledging what is. Because it's like, no, I want to push all those things out rather than bring we're all those things. Because if not, it creates the dynamic for the opposite, right? Yeah. Yeah.
It's the end of the world as we know it.
Hopefully the next evolution is going to be. I mean, I think I'm confident that it's going to happen. We're already in it.
It's already started. It started 20 years ago. Actually, even before that, when they started back when I was born in the 70s, with a lot of new awakenings with what do they Woodstock and in the 60s and 70s, and the evolution has come from there, and we're the baby boomers and the children of that and of the wars, because if you look at it, only now a lot of the Holocaust survivors are dying. Unfortunately, a large mass generation has to die in order for this to unfold. But if we have students and young people only focusing on what they're putting out on the media, or all of this division on social media, or their influencers doing the stupidest things where they just put out these stupid content that's mindless and brainless, and they become followers of materialism or whatever, and not realizing that they actually have the power to be a productive member of society, to have a fulfilled life, to cheaters and this and that, all this stuff. We just have to help. We have to. I believe that the one of the most important things right now is to help create content that's going to like what maybe you can't do a family constellations to the students, but maybe what you could do in a creative curriculum is create like a PJ Masks, where it's you learn the messages through an animation that's now going to be education.
That's where I'm going.
Yeah.
Meaning, if they're going to chart their future and find their interests, an essential component of that is to get to the crux of those patterns, and in an indirect way, maybe it's gamified or engaging or whatever, that indirectly awakens in their minds to start to explore these things.
Yeah.
And then they'll evolve.
Or even simple meditations.
Whatever
Like the meditation that we did today, we could do something
that
similar.
guides them to begin to think and ask the questions, so that detachment of those patterns can begin.
Yeah.
That's where I was going.
I completely agree.
Yeah, and
If you're busy hating someone, you can't have a conversation. You just have a
But
fight.
if you understand that Hating
Or
them is
judging.
not doing anything. Hating means that you're not willing to accept it, open it, and
Yeah.
and let it part so you can move forward. That they have to understand that it's a hindrance.
Yeah.
That
And-
going against is a hindrance.
And problems don't want to be solved; they want to be understood.
it isn't that they don't want to be solved. It's not your job to solve them.
Yeah.
You need
They
to
just want to be
understand.
understood. Yeah. You're right.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, the thing that you could do with kids is meditations. It's a simple way to, get in the right mindset for
Setting the intention.
transformation.
Yeah, so if you had a 4-week program, number one is or begins with the meditation, and
Yeah.
it leads them through that time to transformation.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So
Well, that's 3 hours and 8 minutes. That's good. So how do we get a hold of how do people get a hold of you, Leah? Like email?
right, it can be info at enlightunite.org or Leah or Peter
Okay.
at enlightunite.org or the website www.enlightunite.org. Like I said, probably within the next 2 months, all of the website's going to be
Good.
updated with the current evolution. But we still have an active website. We can still take donations. We can,
Okay.
you know that it's going toward a good thing. With all the money that comes in, it's going to cover obviously the operation end of it, but really mostly to grant other programs to make sure that they can do the activities that they can do to participate, as
Okay.
well as the filming, capturing the whole thing, so that we can make a greater impact in this world with our collaborative partners.
All right. So enlightunite.org.
Yes.
Everybody go, donate, sign up for the cause. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.